Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our regularly scheduled Monday, April 10th, 2023 meeting of the Haverford Township Board of Commissioners. Prior to this meeting at 6:15 today, we conducted a TEPRA hearing about the 2023 bond issue. Mr. Berman, would you call the roll?
Commissioner Gondik.
Present.
Commissioner Forresty-Grupp.
Here.
Commissioner McCluskey.
Here.
Commissioner Cavender.
Here.
Commissioner Quinn.
Here.
Commissioner Hart.
Here.
Commissioner Wexler.
Here.
Commissioner Trombetta.
Here.
Commissioner Holmes.
Here. Deputy Chief? Our first item on tonight's agenda is for the board to consider the township manager's appointment of a Director of Information Technology. Mr. Berman, do you have a recommendation for us?
Yes, Commissioner Holmes, board members, Paul Heilman has worked for the township for about 11 years now. Most of it has been in the background under Rick McClary, who retired recently. And so Paul, as a Drexel grad, has accepted the position conditionally upon your approval.
I need a motion from one of my colleagues.
President, I'll make the motion to approve the Township Manager's appointment of Paul Heilman as Director of Information Technology.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions or comment? Hearing none, Mr. Berman?
Commissioner Gondik.
Yes.
Commissioner Forresty-Grupp.
Yes.
Commissioner McCluskey.
Yes.
Commissioner Cavender.
Yes.
Commissioner Quinn.
Yes.
Commissioner Hart.
Yes.
Commissioner Wexler.
Yes.
Commissioner Trombetta.
Yes.
Commissioner Holmes.
Yes, and let me be the first to congratulate you on your appointment, Mr. Heilman. Your first task is to back up my phone. Everybody laughs. They don't know what that means. Next, on our agenda will be a proclamation for the annual Arbor Day Remembrance.
Mr. President,
Mr. Hart, yes.
whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees, and whereas this holiday, called Arbor Day, was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska, and whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and world, and whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce life-giving oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource, giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. Now, therefore, the Haverford Township Board of Commissioners do hereby proclaim the last Friday in April as Arbor Day in Haverford Township and urge all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day and to support efforts to protect our trees, parks, and woodland. And further, the Board of Commissioners of the Township of Haverford urge all citizens to plant and care for trees to gladden the heart and promote the well-being of this and future generations. Proclaimed this 10th day of April, 2023, Township of Haverford. C. Lawrence Holmes, Esquire, President.
Thank you, Commissioner Hart. I have here we go, proclamation. So, next on our agenda, Mr. Barrett, you'll be presenting Brookline Park Planning Committee.
Thank you, Commissioners. Is this on? Is that okay? Tonight we're here to present the.
The light on?
Yes. Tonight, we're here to present the Brookline Park Master Plan draft concept that we put together through meetings that we had with community members. I'm just going to give you a little background. In 2021, when the township decided to make Brookline School a park, Commissioner Hart suggested we engage with some of the residents to see what the neighbors in the area would like. After 3 or 4 meetings in the fall of 2021, meeting with the neighbors, it was decided to pursue a master plan process. So a decision was made to hire a planner, and we interviewed 10 firms in early 2022. The firm that got it was Simone Collins, and presenting for Simone Collins will be Sarah Leeper, who'll be up in a minute. After that process started in September of 2022, a steering committee was formed, and that included Commissioner Hart, neighbors, park board members, and recreation staff. We've had up to this time 5 steering committee meetings, 3 public meetings, a public survey, and 4 focus group meetings. Now we're ready to present a draft plan. And I want to reiterate, this is a draft plan. There's still time to make changes, still time to get feedback from the residents, from the board, from the park board, and others. So without any further ado, I'm going to introduce Sarah Leeper.
Hello, thank you for your time tonight. I have a brief presentation. I'll try to stick to 10 minutes, then we can open up to questions. Just to kind of give you an update where we are with the master plan, we like to always kind of go over this graphic. A master plan is not construction documents. Obviously, this can't be bid out, but it kind of shows the will of the community of how they want to move forward with the park itself. To date, we've collected data, done site analysis, worked with the public and the committee to set a site program, went through preliminary concepts, and we're at the draft phase plan of the plan. And you can see all the meetings that we've gone through as Brian iterated in the introduction. Again, here's our schedule and dates. So we did start the process in September of 2022. We will be posting the draft plan online for review following this meeting. And then we're receiving comments. We have a comment form for public to submit comments. And we'll come back to the public in June, end of June, with a final plan recommendation. And then we'll revisit with you in July. To date, this is just kind of a summary. We have held meeting 3 as well about 2 weeks ago. I think we had about 80 people at that meeting. It was very well attended. But as you can see, we've had over 1,000 interactions with the public through our meetings, focus groups, and the online survey. When we went through the program refinements, so these are all the elements that we're recommending for in the park, there were 3 points that we explored at the alternative concept level that we kind of worked through with the committee leading up to the draft plan, who was really kind of talking to the public and getting feedback. One being a water play feature or a splash pad, the other regarding restrooms, and the last regarding parking. In terms of the water play feature, you're familiar with the fact that the township is doing an open space study currently. So through that process, they've kind of identified other places where such a feature might be more relevant within your park system. And really with the neighborhood, one of the main concerns was it would make the park a destination where people would really kind of seek out the park, which this really is a neighborhood park looking to serve the adjacent community. Regarding restrooms, this was something where people felt strongly on both sides of it. I think, the survey was very informative. When you look at it and you kind of break it down by how far away people live from the park, you can see, the closer you live to the park, the less you feel a restroom is necessary. I think when you look at that half-a-mile distance, so this is still within walking distance of the park, you see that 60% of the respondents felt restrooms were necessary. Overall, it was right at 53%. I think the main concern with restrooms in the park is just that they're maintained and that they're not dominating the park. So we are recommending a single occupancy building, so a very small kind of turnkey restroom kit, and really focusing on finishes that kind of draw from the architectural style of the neighboring residences, and also finishes that are very vandal resistant so that it can be maintained easily. Parking was another big area of topic for discussion. And it's something that we're still working through at the draft plan level. I think there's still a lot of concerns about, is there enough parking? Is there too much parking? How does it affect the neighborhood on-street parking? So we have developed kind of a list of goals. One is just a concept that provides for both neighborhood use and park users. We want to make sure we're maximizing the green space within the park, so we're not taking away from park space, but developing internal parking. And then also minimizing pedestrian and vehicular conflicts. And last, just making sure that we're minimizing the amount of pavement we have to add to the area when we add parking. So in terms of the draft plan, we do have it kind of divided into 4 areas, and we'll go through each of these areas. Let me see, is my pointer working for you guys? So we'll start at like Arlington, we'll move over into the area that we kind of refer to as the porch, and then we'll go over elements of the central area, and then last kind of looking at area 4, which is where all the play activities are kind of centralized. So looking at Arlington, what we're recommending here is at both intersections, each intersection with Arlington, both at Sagamore and Kenmore, that we kind of develop bump outs to narrow the street crossings, and we're proposing crosswalks at each of those intersections. And then those would be paired with pedestrian scale flashing beacons, rapid flashing beacons, since there is no other control device at those intersections. So the goal here is to really slow down traffic. That was something we heard a lot from residents, and to create safe pedestrian crossings. Paired with this, we're also looking at a new improved sidewalk along Arlington. So we're proposing that we shift the sidewalk away from the street edge. Currently it hugs the curb line. Develop tree planting. So those shade trees over time will also help with slowing down traffic. Shows that shade trees do kind of slow traffic on public roads. And then a nice 8-foot wide sidewalk kind of pulled away into the park. And then we are looking at a fence line that would start along the Arlington edge of the park, but also surround the entire park with entrances at key locations. And then kind of a nice planting that transitions from that sidewalk into the park itself. Central to the Arlington Ave is kind of a little sitting area with 2 benches if you're on the street side of the park. And looking at kind of a park wall that would be kind of along that plaza. So here you're looking at an elevation and concept of what that wall would look like if you're standing in Arlington. And this is kind of proposed right where the historic entrance to the building would have been. And we're kind of playing off of the architectural of kind of the 3 arches on the doors and the windows, and kind of picking that up in a shade arbor that would be on the inside of the park at a little plaza area within the park. As we move into the park, we have 2 main entrances coming in from the corners of Arlington, Sagamore, and Kenmore. Those bring you into the park itself, and then you kind of have the beginning of what we're calling the perimeter walkway, which kind of forms the curve of the park. At area B is that kind of arbor area that we were looking at in elevation just prior to this. Underneath that would be a small sitting area, and this area would be kind of raised up about 2.5 feet, so it kind of starts to act like a porch to the park. So the idea is people kind of sit up here, you can see out across the park, and easily be seen from everybody in the park as well. Coming off of that area at C are some lawn steps that kind of come down into area G, which is this small-scaled open lawn. And then opposite that area at E and D is a mounded lawn where we see kind of informal play of kids kind of, rolling down the hill, and then kind of some movable Adirondack chairs on top of that mound. Also sitting-wise in this area, at B, under the arbor, we have some seat swings, and then at F, we have traditional benches along the perimeter path area. As we move into the central portion of the site, we like to refer to this as the central gathering area, and we have kind of 3 different areas of various scales and kind of geared at different uses within this zone. At the very top, at area A, is the start of what we're calling a tree grove. So these are really tightly planted trees to help create a good area of shade in the seating area at number A. Underneath that would be kind of a stone dust pavement, which would be permeable. So this would be maybe a place where we collect stormwater for BMP or best management practices. And in that area up at A, we're looking at kind of movable chairs and tables, bistro style, to have flexible seating. As you move down into kind of area H, maybe we have more permanent boulders that kind of act as play, climbing, as well as seating. And then that last area F is still part of that tree grove, so this kind of divides the park in half physically, would be just a planted area. At area D and E is more of a central plaza with kind of a custom or keynote bench That's kind of the curve feature you're seeing in there that would look out over the different sides of the park, one towards the large open lawn and the other back towards the raised porch area. And then at G is where we're recommending the single occupancy restroom there. So moving into the eastern play area, the key thing here is the large open lawn at number A. So this is sized for U6 or kind of kindergarten age soccer, as well as a t-ball field could easily be accommodated in this area. We do have kind of a low seat wall that forms one edge of that at B, so kind of creating some informal seating along that lawn area, as well as kind of our pathway at H continuing around. We do have 2 gated entrances at this area at I, so since this is a more active play area with the playground and the lawn, we wanted to make sure we could control movement of children in and out of the site. We have our play area in orange there with a manufactured play unit there, and then surrounding that play area are kind of 3 smaller scale mounds for informal play with some pathways. So we kind of see this as being kind of a little garden area where kids can kind of explore through the pathways. At area D, we're looking at a half-court basketball court with other games. So this is really envisioned as a multi-use court area for pickup games. And then key here is that fence, as it gets to the neighboring properties, becomes probably a taller fence, probably about 6 feet high along the neighboring edge, and then more of a buffer planting at G there with some evergreens where we have adjacent neighboring properties. Lighting, we do have budget within our cost estimates for lighting. This is a very schematic design, but the idea here is since this kind of functions more as a town common than some of your parks currently do in the township, that we do want to make sure we provide for some level of lighting here, be it safety lighting that kind of is activated at night if there's unwanted gathering or motion, or just lighting that's on till 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock on a summer evening so that people can walk their dogs through the park. That's something that, needs to be worked out with the neighbors to really determine how they want to use the park in the evening. In terms of funding and probable cost of development, we've broken down the cost a couple of ways. We are at about 2.7 million if we're rounding up. All of these costs have a detailed cost estimate that supports these numbers of how we got here. But here we're kind of looking at it by area that we each went through. So the site-wide improvements is really kind of looking at things like utility, the main walkways that we kind of talked about, the perimeter walks, and then each area you kind of see the numbers, how they add up. We definitely think this park hits a lot of the check boxes for our standard funding agencies, looking at DCNR and DCED. We know that the township does have some dollars in hand and that they could definitely match these grant programs. Looking at kind of how you might phase something. So this is kind of looking at it a different way, thinking about phasing. And this is just the first shot at phasing. And this is something we definitely want to work through with the committee and staff and the public moving forward. But we want to make sure we get a scale of economy in our construction here. So, we don't want to break it down too much because then you start to lose a value of kind of bidding it out to a single contractor. So with phase 1, we're really looking at kind of focusing on those street calming improvements with the sidewalks and the crosswalks, as well as getting kind of the major park amenities in place that are all kind of interconnected. When we really kind of looked at what we could pull out for a phase 2, the playground area becomes one of the most kind of finite big ticket items that you can kind of pull out and do in a second phase. So that's why we've honed in on the playground, even though it might not be the most popular item to say we're going to do that second. We've also looked at the idea that maybe you phase in all the parking, so you do half at one point and then determine if you need more to do the rest in a future point. Again, from a constructability point of view, it might make sense to do all the parking at once if we feel like that's what we're going to need, but we wanted to make sure we're being conscious of the public feedback we've received to date on parking. So with that, I will open up to questions.
Mike,
Thank you.
always have any questions? Yes.
Thank you for the presentation. It looks fantastic. I'm sorry if I missed this during the but about how many kids will this accommodate in the various ways? How crowded will it get? what kinds of things will be going on simultaneously?
Yeah, so traditionally the site has served for youth soccer on Saturday mornings. So that would probably be the most intensive kind of regular activity that would happen here. Typically a team roster is 6 to 8 kids, so 2 games going on at the same time. You're looking at 24 to like 30 kids and parents on site. So that's where we're kind of looking at in terms of kind of a focused use. They do set up their games so that there's time in between for parking to change out. They're very conscious of neighborhood parking. In terms of day-to-day use, when the park first opens up, they'll probably be kind of new and shiny and people want to go check it out. But I think it would be like any other neighborhood park you have. So the Grange would be an example of how many people are there on a given day using the park. We would anticipate very similar use.
Thank you. I guess it sounds like you've done a lot of planning for parking and things, but it looks to me like you've really maximized the space so that as many types of groups of people can use it as possible. So I think it looks great. Thanks.
If I could ask, is it the expectation that the open lawn is going to be used for organized sports?
I think we were told that youth soccer had used the site and that was a continued use that the community wanted to see. So that was one of the elements we were told would be a program at the park. It's not intended to be used for like large soccer fields, right? It's really, I forget the dimensions of a youth soccer field for U6, but they're very tiny fields. So you run them side by side. They don't even have like penalty boxes. I mean, they're very small fields. So you're talking about, I think it's 5 kids or 4v4 playing at a time.
And you could fit 2 fields in
Yes.
that area, and that's what it's used for now. There's usually 2 fields, 2 games going on at a time on Saturday mornings, and that space would be adequate to continue that.
Oh, okay. I mean, it's being reconfigured, right? I mean, right now the space is kind of rectangular where they are, or?
Yeah.
The space is, but we did look at it, and the 2 fields would fit in with adequate space. Mm-hmm. And it has never been used never in the last 30 years anyway, for anything else except for the youth soccer and more informal, some t-ball games or neighborhood games. It's not intended for the older age groups to play formal sporting events there.
Well, I know I played there when I was 4 and 5, and that was the end of my career after that.
Peaked early.
I think you should have stuck with it, Commissioner.
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Trombetta.
Ms. Leeper. So I understand that, again, this is still just a draft plan and that you're going to be reviewing comments. Can you tell me how the public can comment on this when
Yes.
they submit those comments?
I don't have that slide in this, but we do have, and I believe it's on the township website. If not, we'll get it up tomorrow. It's just like we did the online survey. It's through SurveyMonkey. We'll provide a QR code with a poster and a link where people can go on, and it's just an open-ended form. We just ask for a name and location for just public record of where someone lives, and then they can give us all the comment that they want on the plan.
Thank
So
you.
I will follow up with Brian and Eileen to get that information out.
Oh, thanks. So this is a pretty spectacular plan, and given some of the features of this park, it seems to me that it would become for at least a while a destination park, because the conversation bench is fabulous, the stepped plaza, it's unique, I think, in the township. And so I'm looking at the proposed parking, and it is observed that there would need to be approval by the state. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that, because with currently it only has 65 spaces, and then the proposed spaces would increase it by 18 spaces to 83. So I was wondering if you could talk just a little bit about how the parking configuration would change, and just sort of run that forward.
Definitely. So I just kind of bring your attention to the slides I changed to. We did go through just a quick kind of analysis of what parking's there. So we looked at parking that is along the park and then also the parking directly opposite the park on the opposite curb line. So that's where we're estimating that today there's about 65 spaces within the vicinity of the park. And at any given time, I mean, if you go there at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, there's very little parking happening kind of along the edges of the park, right? So these spaces are used by residences, sometimes they're used by contractors, depending on the time of day and what's going on in the neighborhood. When we start to look at proposed, we went through a series of different options in terms of recommendations of other sites that committee members or public members had asked us to look at. But in terms of trying to get kind of the most parking within the vicinity of the park without kind of putting it in the park, which, starts to eat away a lot at what can happen in the park, we came up with the idea of the head-in parking along Sagamore, so that's kind of pulling directly in. And as you can see here, we're moving that parking into the park. We're not cutting into the street right away. And then on Kenmore, doing the angled parking, which again is being located within the park property line as well. So with that, we were able to then get 83 spaces when you're still counting the opposite parallel parking that would happen on Kenmore and Sagamore. So that's where we're getting the net gain of 18 spaces. So where 18 spaces maybe doesn't sound like a lot to say that's what's dedicated to the park. And I want to be clear, like, we don't see any of these spaces being solely park spaces or solely neighborhood spaces. Like, it's a shared use is kind of the idea here. That, having those 83 spaces within the vicinity of the park should accommodate the demand. I mean, obviously we don't have a crystal ball and it's really, there are no good standards for how much parking do you need at a park, right? Every park is very unique. Every neighborhood it falls in is also very unique. So that's where one of the ideas with maybe looking, because I think one of the things we heard was that maybe we're showing too much parking. I think people see 83 and they think that's a lot of parking. So, but some people see it and they think that's not enough parking. So it's, it's a lot of, that's how we got to where we're at.
Just a couple quick questions. One is, I see one of the features of the park is tables, chairs, Adirondack chairs, and so on. Just, knowing kind of the way, let's just say kids can be kids, has there been discussion or, what is the plan to kind of safeguard these movable items that are in the park?
Yeah, so that's always a good question. Just kind of looking through the seating so, the most movable thing that's going to be out there are probably, bistro chairs and tables. I will just say from experience, we had a set of these ones specifically in our office. They're not easily moved. I mean, they are still heavy chairs, right? But if we're worried, they can always be kind of locked in place with a chain system or a cable system. The Adirondack chairs, again, they can be moved. They're not easily moved. I think a lot of parks have successfully used these in their parks. Ardmore, is it Linfield? Ardmore has a park where they have these in them. A great example where both these movable chairs are used in a very high-profile public location is the King of Prussia First Ave. They actually have very light Adirondack chairs, which anyone, a toddler, could pick up and move, and then also the bistro chairs. And to date, we're not aware of any vandalism or them being thrown or moved or taken. Just people are kind of using them as they need to use them. So.
The other question I have is, outside of the initial build out, let's just say that this is the plan that you go with and that it gets approved and this is built out. And I don't know if this is a question for you or maybe this is a question for Mr. Barrett. It's a beautiful park and there's a lot going on. I guess my question is, on an ongoing basis, this park to me seems like it's going to require a lot more maintenance and upkeep than a lot of, if not every other park we have in the township. So I guess, has there been any consideration or thought to that issue? And if so, where does that stand?
Yeah. So I think definitely the biggest difference here at this park is probably the level of kind of I don't want to call it buffer planting, but kind of, the planting that's dividing kind of the sidewalk from the park area. So you're seeing in that darker green. And I think this is something that when you look at a lot of Haverford's parks or older communities, their parks were developed in the 60s, and it was about maxing out lawn. If you're lucky, maybe you have a group of shade trees with some picnic benches. And, parks have kind of changed. Today, we're looking at how are we sustainable? How are we dealing with our stormwater? So, with the planting of the trees in this park and the bed areas, those will all kind of build into how are we creating habitat within our parks and handling stormwater. But with that, obviously, we want to make sure that they're easily maintained. So there will be some consideration that needs to be given to making sure that the planting's not too detailed or that it's low maintenance. We don't want to plant a row of hedges where you have to hedge them 3 times a year, right? We want some shrubs that are going to stay low, but still offer what we need them to offer. And then we've also talked with the Penfield Civic Association about working with the local master gardeners, also some of the tree tenders, to see if we can kind of form a gardeners club that is focused in on the site and is a volunteer effort to kind of help steward the site and maintain it.
Any other questions from any of my colleagues? I know this is just the start of the process. Thank you very much for a terrific presentation and great work. Mr. Barrett, thank you. And thank you to the team, Commissioner Hart, the folks who spearheaded this. And we look forward to the next steps. Actually, I do have one question, if I can ask. And that is with relation to funding. Do you have any idea as to, just from your own experience in doing other parks, what proportion of the total funding of this are townships, can townships be successful in getting alternative sources of funds?
Yeah, so so a lot of the funding, DCNR really would look at something like this and why it has a lot of the whistles that they like. So that is traditionally a 50-50 match. They just upped their limit for ask to about 300,000. So that's the community partnership program, so the C2P2. Within DCNR, there's also land and conservation funds. So these are awarded by DCNR, but they are federal funds. So they can't be matched to other federal funds, but the ask for that is much higher. It can be about 1 million. So again, that's a 50-50 match. So if the township's able to put together a significant match, we would think this would be a great candidate for land and water conservation funds. Within that, there's also DCED programs, so that's their Green Trail initiatives, which again, that's about a $200,000 50-50 match. So there is a lot of opportunities out there to pursue funding, and we think you have a really great community need, and kind of the things that you're recommending in this park kind of check off what all these agencies are looking to fund.
Thank you. Thank you for that answer. Any other questions or comments at this point? Well, thank you. Thank you for your presentation.
Have a good evening.
You have a wonderful evening. Okay, next on our agenda is the Citizen Forum. This will be 20 minutes of registered speakers, and then also other speakers who are want to speak on an item that we are acting on tonight on the agenda. Our first registered speaker is Ann Phillips. Welcome back.
Hello. Hi, my name is Ann Phillips. I reside at 2628 Wendy Road, Havertown, PA. I am here to represent Freedom Playground. I am the president of the Freedom Playground Committee. Little history of it. We started the efforts in 2008 when the Haverford Reserve was being developed. The playground is at Haverford Reserve, for those of you who do not know that. And our goal was to build a fully handicap accessible playground. And what I mean by that is going well beyond ADA requirements, so that anyone who's in a wheelchair or a walker or on crutches even temporarily can get anywhere on the playground and be able to actually do something once they get there. So this was, I started the efforts in 2008. We ended up building the playground in 2010 in the spring, and then we opened it in the fall of 2010. So it's been open for 13 years now, which is a little hard for me to believe because I know some of you actually came and volunteered, and with about 2,000 others of my closest friends. So the Parks and Rec has informed me that we have about 300 visitors there per day to the playground. So I did a little calculations, and that comes up to 1.4 million visitors over the past 13 years. And all during that time, my committee has stayed together, and we have done maintenance days annually. Parks and Rec did a major maintenance of the playground in September of 2022, just, a few months ago, where they fixed a number of things that had just, gotten worn over the, again, 1.4 million visitors who came and went. So they did that, and of course we had COVID. So my committee's back in for our annual maintenance day, and I'm here to ask for volunteers to come out and help us. The maintenance day is on Saturday, April 29th. It's from 9 to 3, and I did create a sign-up genius, which Parks and Rec was kind enough to put into our Have a Good Times. So if you have a Have a Good Times, you should be able to look that up. I also have posted that on our website, which is haverfordfreedomplayground.org. I have also provided that to the commissioner's secretary, Gloria, so they have access to that if they want to promote it. So I'm asking you to promote it. It's also on our Facebook page if you're a Facebook friend. And last but not least, I have a QR code here. So maybe our friends at home, if you would like to pause your TV and hone in on this, please do so. And I'm going to hand this around. Thank you, technology.
Yeah, would you hand it to me?
Sure. Here you go.
Off. I don't know if she can zero in on it. Here we go. Let me give it back to you.
Oh, thanks.
Well, Larry, I don't think your phone works on that.
No.
So again,
It has a
Parks and
nice
Rec
ring.
did this major maintenance last fall. Our job is to make it pretty. So want to shout out to Nolan Painting. They're coming out again, and they're painting the turrets for us, which is, this might be the 5th time they're doing that. So we really appreciate that because, nobody likes ladders except for maybe Nolan Painting. What we need the volunteers for is to vacuum up all of the sand, because people think that the sandbox is actually much larger than it really is. And we are going to, after the Parks and Rec power washes everything the week before, we're going to treat the pressure-treated lumber. So a lot of the playground is composite lumber, but also a lot of it is pressure-treated lumber. So we get out every year and we treat that. So it's very, very basic help that we need, vacuuming and painting pressure-treated lumber. But it's 12,000 square feet, so it's a lot. So all the help that we can get would be wonderful. We do ask people to bring shop vacs if you have one, because we need them. And we are looking for 12 years and older, because the playground will not be in use during the time that we are doing the maintenance. There'll be, as I mentioned before, ladders and lots of extension cords for the vacuums. So we're not actually, that's a one day a year where the playground is not in use for, this beautification process. So if you can help, we'd appreciate it. And thank you
Thank
to
you.
everyone who has helped previously.
Thank you so much for your extraordinary work. Next on our agenda, next on our list is Christine Farris.
Good evening, Commissioners and ladies and gentlemen. I'm happy to have the opportunity to express my thoughts on the proposed renovation of the Haverford Township Free Library. Most of you know me through the 25 years of service to the library, but especially as the director of HTFL. Although it has been 6 years since my retirement, the library still remains a very strong and significant part of my life, as it has for the last 45 years when I moved to this community. HTFL has been an essential part of the township since its inception, and it continues to bring the community together and serve people of all ages on a daily basis. It is very clear that the library is in desperate need of a renovation and an expansion. And having lived through and dealt with countless repairs and inadequacies Spacing issues as well as insufficient parking, the library is long overdue for a 21st century transformation. Do we need a renovation of the library building at 1601 Darby Road, adding an important element in a vibrant and exciting township? Absolutely. Does a good school system and a modern public library convince people who are looking to purchase a home in Haverford Township? The answer is a resounding yes. I was told years ago by a couple of prominent people in the township that libraries were not needed anymore because people just don't read books. I was happy to provide them with statistics indicating to the contrary, and that HTFL had the highest circulation of library materials of the 28 public libraries in the Delaware County Library System, as well as visitors to the building. The most important thing that I could convey to you is that libraries have had a transformation over the years to include education for every age through technology, programming, and yes, even books. We have learned and experienced over the last 3 years of the pandemic the importance of socialization in everyday life. Modern libraries play an important role in everyone's well-being. That is why I feel the planned expansion of the library should include meeting rooms for business and community meetings, space for programs for the growing senior citizen population, especially as Surrey Services has moved their operation to Broomall. From intergenerational programs to areas for after-school programs and early childhood educational opportunities, tutoring, quiet reading, technology, and so much more. I ask all of you to approve the rebuilding and expansion of the library for the betterment of the Haverford Township community and for its citizens of all ages, because the Haverford Township Free Library is truly an educational community center for lifelong learning. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Next on our agenda, David Ogg. Good evening.
My name is David Ogg. I live at 215 Colfax Road in Havertown, and I'm here to discuss Paddock Park's pickleball problem. Well, it's a problem to me anyhow. But before I go any further, I want to thank Judy Trombetti and Brian Barrett for all the work they've done this past, I guess, about 6 months or so that we've been working on a solution for this problem. I've lived in Havertown for 70 of my 72 years. My grandchildren are third generation to go to Linwood. My wife was very active in initiating and, restarting the Civic Association at Paddock Park 30 years ago. In living here at on Colfax for 45 years, I have never had a problem with township of any kind until pickleball. Some don't realize probably the constant noise unless you lived where I did. Walking through the park, even for a half an hour, you might think, well, what's the problem? Well, if you live where I do, it's a big deal. And it's not only that, it's a big deal throughout the country, as I've come to learn in the past 6 months from looking into this. The nuisance isn't limited to the volume of the sound of the wood paddle hitting the hard plastic ball. It's also the pitch of the sound and the rapidity of the noise. With up to 32 people playing at one time, it sounds like popping corn or someone constantly knocking on your door. At times, the sound is multiple times a second. Last year, Paddock Park was not a local park. It wasn't even a township park. It was more of a county park. I know of people coming from King of Prussia, Exton, Newtown Square, and Upper Darby. In essence, I'm paying taxes so people out of our township can come here and annoy me and my neighbors. It's that simple. One poor family in Westgate.
You should drop the mic right there. It's perfect. Yeah. great.
One poor family in Westgate, where I grew up as a kid, they moved. They couldn't take it anymore. Now, the new people are dealing with it, the ones that moved in there, because of the picklers, as they're called. I was here long before they came into my neighborhood, and I'm not about to move because of this sound they're creating. Putting the courts here started with good intentions, I'm sure, but it's grown into a real problem throughout the country. I've done a lot of reading on the subject, and many neighborhoods are having battles with townships and cities. Some areas have even gone as far as litigation, some of which have won their case and courts were eliminated for good. I've been in contact with Bob Unitet, who is a sound engineer. His company is in Pittsburgh. He is an avid pickler himself. He's also a referee. His company is doing many sound tests and have recommended the courts be at least 450 feet from homes. Paddock courts are 150 from my property. Sound levels should be somewhere in the vicinity of 55 decibels or lower. My house, I've measured at over 72 decibels. It was a huge mistake putting the courts here in the first place. I don't know if the Board of Commissioners approved it at that time or were even involved in the decision of this nightmare. Back then, it was mostly older people like me gently hitting the ball over the nets. Now there's a lot of more younger people in their 30s and 40s, and they're slamming the ball much harder and faster. I'm willing to bet that if any of you lived where I live, you would not be able to tolerate it either. If you're interested in learning more, you can Google Bob Unitek or BP Pickleball Sound Mitigation, and you will find a great deal of information. Pickleball noise problems have been in the local news, on TV. Even Brian Gumbel did a segment on his show a few months back. This problem isn't going away.
Mr. Ogg, I
Yes.
will need you to wind things up if you can.
Yeah, okay. In conclusion, I strongly urge you to vote to try and help with the sound mitigation and vote to install sound limiting wall panels of some sort. Hopefully, they will make an acceptable reduction of the sound to me and my neighbors. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And thank you, Judy and Brian.
Kathleen Rowe? Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. Excuse me. My name is Kathleen Rowe. I'm from 227 East Manoa Road. I'm here today in support of the library renovations and expansion. I've been a volunteer for the library for the past 10 years. I'm on the board of directors of the, the Friends of the Library, and I'm responsible for running the 2 book sales that we have every year. Our library is a community hub, and it offers not just books, but entertainment, workshops, and programs for all ages. It's also a place for gathering and socializing. Our space is dated, and the building is slowly falling apart. So I think it's time for renovations and expansion now. Tonight, I just want to mention 3 situations where renovations and expansion are sorely needed. First is the tutoring. Currently, students and their tutors sit along the side wall of the library, in the aisle, out in the open. It's difficult for students to maintain focus with all the activity that's going on around them. Add to that the fact that their friends and other library patrons can see that they are being tutored, and anyone who walks or drives by, because the tutoring is done in the windows along Mill and Darby roads. That could be very embarrassing for a student and could hinder, their opportunity to take advantage of the tutoring. The tutor rooms that are proposed as part of the renovation will provide much needed privacy and a more relaxed environment conducive to learning. The second area is the quiet sitting area. I myself am a senior, and I see seniors come in every day to quietly read a book or read a newspaper. Currently, the sitting area is located in a direct line from the front door to the elevators and between the circulation and the reference desks. There is a constant stream of traffic in front of and through that area all day long. Every mom bringing a child in a stroller to story time, staff rolling carts of books to the elevator, and all the activities that go on at the reference desk make quiet reading nearly impossible. The proposed new living room will alleviate this problem by providing a dedicated space to the side of the entrance that will not serve as a walkway to any other area. And finally, the Friends space. This is a personal one for me. Anyone who has attended the book sale will recognize the room that we refer to as the dungeon. It is where the Friends keep, sort, and box the books donated for the book sale, and it is also used by our patrons during the book sale. It's damp with mold and sometimes water. The lighting is poor, the carpet is worn and torn, tables are collapsing, and the floor has holes in it. It's definitely not a space where anyone should be spending any length of time. The Friends work tirelessly to provide funds and support for the library, so they should not be an afterthought. The proposed renovation of the dungeon to a safe working area with stable shelves and tables is desperately needed if the book sales are to be continued. So for the safety and well-being of our patrons, I urge you to move forward with the renovations and expansion now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Megan Lee? Yeah.
Hi, good evening. My name is Megan Lee. Is there a way to move this up?
There's no way to move the entire podium.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, sorry.
My name is Megan Lee, and my family and I have we've lived in Haverford Town for almost a year now. I live on Lawrence Road. My husband and I have 2 daughters who are 2 and 5, and I support the renovation of the library. So this is made by my 2-year-old this past week that Miss Katrine hosted at the library. My children have really learned a lot of things from such things as different types of penguins, how a seed becomes a plant, and life cycle of a butterfly through craft story time. They've been able to practice listening to and following directions, using spatial and fine motor skills, and learning how to use different art mediums such as watercolor. We currently have story time in the hub, and in the hub I've also noticed there's the prom closet they have for high schoolers, board games for the family time events, and playmats for story time, all in this one space. And I think of how much more they could do with more space for each age range. Having spaces dedicated to different age ranges is what I think is the perfect way for the children in our community to feel a sense of belonging at the library. It can get crowded upstairs after school, so we try to go in the morning. There have been times where there's no tables available. I want our future generation to be encouraged to be at the library, which is a safe place for them to study, read, build their imagination, and meet with friends. I'm excited to bring my children to the proposed play area and maker spaces. I really look forward to having somewhere free and local to meet with friends with kids for play dates, somewhere that's suitable in fair and poor weather, something that we don't currently have in Havertown. I'm looking forward to the updated HVAC system. Last week we stayed around to check out books after story time. It was a little warm that day. We weren't really dressed for the weather. That was the upstairs. And we had to leave early because it was really stuffy and warm. I think also I think of the staff who works hard to keep the library in good condition, and I know that it must be uncomfortable for them as well. I'm looking forward to an updated elevator so that all community members will feel included and that they are not only welcome, but also invited to all areas of the library. I think of those especially who have trouble with stairs, those with limited mobility or special needs, and also moms with strollers who are juggling to get their kids and infants to story time or upstairs. I'm also looking for or hoping for renovation so the library can stay up to date, especially when you compare our library to libraries in surrounding areas, so that our home values can also stay competitive as there's potential buyers who come and visit the library here. Finally, I'm looking forward to the renovation to make the library the best that it can be, so that all residents can be encouraged to come often and build community together, and also to read books, which we always go to the library for. We're really excited and hoping for the renovation, and we hope that you all agree as well. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. Irene Coffey. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Irene Coffey. I live at 1437 Maryland Avenue in Havertown. I am a librarian, and pardon me, I have to say I support the three previous people who have spoken about the library. Now, can you hear me? Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. Should I start over? I'm Irene Coffey,
Well, we can hear you,
1437
but
Maryland.
the
Okay.
audience.
I grew up in Haverford Township. I remember the pre-1970s version of the library. It had a small room filled with fiction, and it was my dream to somehow read every single book. Needless to say, I failed. But the contents of that room provided me with many wonderful hours of reading pleasure. Our children also grew up in Havertown. Trips to the library were an essential part of our daily routine, weekly routine, I should say. But the library had evolved. In addition to the books we'd bring home, the library now offered summer reading programs and story times. And the library offered far more children's books than they'd had when I was a child. There was even a children's librarian to assist with recommendations. When I was a child, the library offered me both education and enjoyment, but it was a solitary experience. My sons, through summer reading programs and story times, knew there were other kids out there with similar interests. Now that I'm retired, I've discovered that the library has evolved again, and it has become an even more vital part of my life. I'm a regular attendee of the Friday morning tea and stitch group. Not only does the group offer tips on needle crafts, they also offer evaluations on local restaurants, recommendations on reliable home services, knowledge about community issues and events, and a warm, caring group of people to spend time with. Pardon me. I also belong, pardon me again, to the Hooked on History
Would you like
Book
some
Club.
water, Ms. Coffey?
Pardon?
Like a sip of water?
I think I'll be okay, thanks. I also belong to the Hooked on History Book Club, a group that certainly demonstrates that learning doesn't stop once school is over. We've traveled the world and explored American history in all ages. The Haverford Township Historical Society, of which I'm a board member, has partnered with the library for a number of years. Thank you for your services. And we offer programs relating to township history. We've heard presentations on topics such as Haverford High School athletics and township residents' involvement in World War II, complete with a display of memorabilia. And that's just one example of the many educational, entertainment, and music programs the library offers. The library has evolved. It still offers the opportunity for solitary education and enjoyment, and I'll still browse the fiction aisles. But along the way, the library has also become a community hub for connecting me with people who share my interests, for engaging me in ongoing educational activities, for making new friends, and for strengthening my ties to the community. The library's renovation plans are the latest steps in their continuing evolution as a source of education and entertainment, 21st century style. I appreciate the support the township and the commissioners have given to the library in the past. I'm counting on you tonight to continue that commitment. I'm personally eager to experience the next evolution of my favorite library. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Coffey.
Thanks for the water.
Mr. Arata.
My name's Larry Arata. I live at 628 Lawson Avenue. I'm a lifetime resident of the township. I'm here tonight to thank the board and their the library board of directors, and all the committee members who have worked so hard over the last few years to determine the best way to meet the needs of the community to improve our public library. The board and its committee members and the library board considered many options, and the Board of Commissioners is ready tonight to vote on their proposed investment in the library renovations. I support the proposed plan and urge the board members to vote yes tonight. Thank you for investing in our youth, our youngest residents who need a place that facilitates their lifelong love of reading. Thank you for investing in our students who need a place to do their homework and research. Thank you for investing in helping residents who have limited access to technology. Thank you for investing in our immigrant community who need a place to help improve their English skills, and our residents who want to learn a second language as they prepare to travel abroad. Thank you for investing in our residents who may need resources to search for a job, put together and print out a resume. Thank you for investing in our sense of community, meeting our needs for rooms to conduct civic group meetings. The current library does not meet all the needs of our community, especially one the size of our township. And your proposed investment is certainly appropriate to meet the needs of the township. Thank you for your transparency with the public during this long process of evaluation and for being considerate of the taxpayers who will be paying for this investment. It should be noted that you did not choose the most expensive options that were considered, and that a chunk of the cost is being addressed by federal sources of funding. So once again, thank you for all your hard work and voting to make this needed public investment in our public library tonight.
That ends our list of registered speakers. We can now invite any members of the public who would like to speak on a agenda item. I'll start here on the left. Let me start with the first row. Second row, ma'am. Oh, wait, no. Oh, no, you're. Let me start with this lady right here in the purple top, and then you'll be next.
Good evening. My name is Rita Waters. I live at 20 Myrtle Avenue. I moved to Havertown 17 years ago. I bought a house in Havertown because it reminded me of where I grew up, in Teaneck, New Jersey, which was a suburb of New York. Exceptional schools, family-oriented neighborhood, friendly people for the most part, and a library that was within walking distance to my house, 4.5 miles. Back then, we walked or rode a bike. I am in support of this new library. Stephen Covey, who's an organizational guru, has always said, when you begin any project, you begin with the end in mind. And then you really can meet your goals. The library team has done an excellent job of putting together a state-of-the-art facility for folks who look like me in terms of age and gender and race. For, I think she left, a young parent who came and talked about her children, the librarians in the room, my favorite people. I belong to 3 book clubs. In calling the library, they supply me with the books. All 3 book clubs deal with African American authors. The librarians are very helpful in terms of making sure I have the physical book or the technology to get the book. This new facility will help Havertown socially, economically, as well as, I forgot the last word that I had down here, socially and economically and educationally, which is very, very important for our young people. They need the technology so they can remain competitive. We in this township need the technology because it'll give us a different view of a world we may not be familiar with. I urge you to vote for Resolution 2305 and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Sir. Sorry, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Beth York. I live on Ivy Rock Lane. I don't really have anything to add. I think I just want to reiterate what everyone else has been saying about the library. I know that I've always used libraries since I was a kid. And I like the idea that in a well-functioning library, lots of different people cross paths. I like that there's story hour happening at the same time that there's a senior group that's meeting up the hall. And I don't know where else that would happen. There seems to be in many communities just not a real good place to go that you don't have to pay for and make a whole lot of complicated arrangements to occupy the space. But I think that a good library system with meeting rooms and groups that meet regularly, especially during days off from school and when there's bad weather, even just having a place to go and access good Wi-Fi when that's necessary. I think that these are things that are worth investing in. I think that the payoff from that is more than we recognize when we don't have it. And when we see a good library system functioning somewhere, it's more than just lending books back and forth. So I'd like to see that happen. So I'm just here to support, I guess, everything everyone else was saying. So thank you.
Thank you. Sir.
Good evening, everyone. And my name is Jim DeMarco, and I live on 301 Colfax Road. I'm a neighbor of Dave Oggs, that was speaking previously, and our home also backs up to Paddock Park. So thank you to the commissioners for giving me a chance to voice our concern over the pickleball noise that we see at Paddock Park. And we're also here to voice our support for the approval of funding for the noise remediation. And while it's only Dave and I speaking here, there are other neighbors who are also concerned, just to make you aware. There are people who live on Marybrook, which also backs up to the park, and other neighbors on Colfax Road that we've been in discussions with, and they have many of the same issues we do. And while the issues may seem petty to some, the noise generated from the pickleball itself and the paddle is so constant and irritating that it actually precludes us from enjoying our home and our deck. If it was only like an hour or so a day, maybe we could live with it and it wouldn't be a big deal. However, the sound is literally from when you wake up in the morning until sundown, and it's 7 days a week. We can hear the constant panging of the balls on both the first and second floor of our homes, even when the windows are closed. Sometimes we almost feel like a prisoner in the home. You go outside, you just shake your head and want to go back in again, but the sound prevents us from enjoying dinner on our deck and even entertaining friends. Otherwise, we have to answer the question of, how do you stand that noise? Why don't you move? Or some other unhelpful solution that they may have. We've been at our current address 40 years, and this is the first time that we've ever raised a concern on any activity at the park, and there are many there. In fact, we've been advocates of the park for almost all of those 40 years in many different ways, between coaching and other things that we have done there. We have no issue with the game itself. It actually looks like it's fun, and I can understand why there's so many players. But the sound is now a national issue, and based on our research, we've become more aware of issues and actions that are happening throughout the country than we care to mention. Pickleball experts who once advocated just join a group and go out and play to alleviate the noise are now realizing that the noise issue is a real issue and something needs to be done. All the experts agree that the court should be a minimum of 500 to 600 feet from homes. While that's not possible at Paddock, we're hoping that sound mitigation at least will help alleviate the problem. Let's see. Okay, it is my hope that the commissioners will approve some funding for the sound remediation has been proposed so that we can see if it does solve our issues. In addition, I hope that solutions used in conjunction with sound barriers throughout the country, such as reduced hours or reduced days, also may be implemented to give us a sense of normalcy again back at our house. And then lastly, I would like to thank Judy and Brian Barrett and even the Park and Recreation Board We went to them with our issue. They listened to our concerns. They were empathetic toward us. And hopefully we can arrive at a solution that will work for all of us. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Monet Riley. I'm at 400 Glendale Road. I'm also a candidate for Commissioner in Ward 9, which I'm only saying because I was told it was a rule. And I'm also a parent of a 4th and 6th grader. And I'm very excited about the library and the space for our children to go after school and do homework and join clubs. And for those who don't know, there is no transportation in the school district for children who participate in after-school activities. So these plans for the library, which is a stone's throw from the middle and high school, allows children with working parents who can't get there at 2:45, which is the middle school let-out time, to have a safe place to go and participate in engaging activities until they can be picked up. And I hope that you approve the ARPA money to go towards those renovations. That being said, I have some questions reading the documents about the financing. And when looking at the statements, there's a lot of interest on the bonds. And I know that the library is not the only project and there's other ones being considered. But I'm just wondering why more ARPA money isn't being used to pay for the library so that maybe less money can be taken in the bonds and less interest can be paid. So please approve the $3 million. I'm asking for more money, not less. Like, the library should get all the money. And then also, it wasn't clear if, and I know when you buy a mortgage, it says if you pay off the loan early, you don't get penalized. And I'm wondering if that's the same with these bonds, because given the interest, maybe you want to pay it off early. And I couldn't tell from reading the documents if the township would be penalized if, more money went towards that to pay it off sooner. So those are my questions. Thanks.
The back row. Anybody in the back row on the left? So I will come to the right, the front row. Yes, ma'am. And you'll be next.
Good evening. My name is Betsy McElreevy. I live at 229 Wendover Drive over in Westgate Hills, and I'd just like to make a comment about the library renovations. This has been an ongoing thing for my entire life in this township. It's about time to do something with the library. The reserve, you got the reserve done. You got this building done. The police got something new. You have got to do something with the library. I'm sorry to be so passionate, but I've been listening to this my whole life. I'm 57 years old. I've lived in this township my whole life. And every single time, the library gets shortchanged. You got the Y. The library should have been put where the Y was all those years ago, but it didn't happen. I'm sorry. I know you're all new. You probably don't even know what I'm talking about, but it's time for the library. I'm really sorry, but the library needs to finally get the renovations that it needs. You should have foreseen and started to buy up all the properties that were right there next to it to make a larger portion. People put buildings up for sale. The orthodontist got that building on the corner. You should have seen what was happening, and we should have purchased that property to make that whole block the library. For the parking, I live in this township, in this town, and I go to the Marple Library. What does that say? I go to the library all the time. And I do actually read a book that you open up. I read one on my tablet, I read one on my phone, and there are resources for the senior citizens, for what they need in large print. The kids need this. We need to keep books alive. And this is what we need to do. We need to make these renovations happen. It's way overdue. Please, please say yes. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Yes.
Hello, I'm Kaya Shababo. I go to Haverford Middle School. I'm in 8th grade. And I go to the library almost every day without fail after school. And as a teenager, we don't belong in the downstairs area because it's for adults and it's supposed to be quiet. And we don't really belong in the upstairs area because we're very loud. And as you might know, it's hard to put a filter on a teenager. And
Hard to
do
put one on a
have the-
commissioner, too.
We do have the hub area from 2:40 to 4, but after 4, we are pushed into the main area with the rest of the children so that they can use the hub for other activities like children's read aloud and art. And then we, as teenagers, have a little bit of a hard time staying quiet and clean, if that makes sense. So I feel like the renovation will make a larger area for teens to be, so we have our own space where we're not disrupting the quiet downstairs and we're not badly influencing the children. And we have more room for our own activities. I personally go to Teen Art Club every Wednesday from 2:40 to 4, and I have gone to other activities for teens at the library, such as teen yoga, and it'd be great if we had our own space for activities and enrichment opportunities. And I just really like the library because you can do anything from study to play card games to just socialize with your friends, and having our own space would be very beneficial for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Those were very, very compelling words. And I'm going to take it on faith that you're a lot better influence around children at the library than you are a bad one. So continue to do what you do. And is there anybody in the second row who'd like to speak? Yes, Ann. Ms. Phillips.
I'm back. Ann Phillips, 2628 Wendy Road. So about the library, I also support the renovation and I appreciate this being considered. But it does relate to Freedom Playground because we use the basement, I think it's now called the dungeon for now and forever, as our meeting space for our meetings, which we had every other week and then weekly and almost daily leading up to the building. So it is a community center and it is used for other things than just taking out books, which I personally grew up in Haverford Township and used the library the whole time, which I still do, use real books. But the meeting space in the basement really was like a miracle for us to have and is used regularly. I am also a proud member of the Tan Stitch group that Eileen just talked about. So yeah, I'm for it too. So thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for using the playground or the meeting space, Christine, when you were the director there, because it really did make a huge difference for us. So as it does for many other groups. Thank you.
Anyone else in the second row who'd like to speak? In the third row. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Sam Krakow. I reside at 430 Lanark Avenue. I feel like I've missed out on Library Day. I wasn't originally going to talk about the library, but I just wanted to say briefly that I love going to the library with my children. Ever since I came here in 2015 when I married my wife and moved to the Lanark area, every Sunday has been, up until the pandemic, has been Senzo's Library Day. And we would go there and we would spend hours there. And I always felt that it's been the focal point of my life with my kids. And I wholly support having that library renovated and to be made into the fantastic and energetic place it should be. My topic is very similar, but actually kind of related. I'd like to express my support for the responsible contractor ordinance that's being proposed tonight. The ordinance may be long, but it has 4 simple points. 1, all work should be done by a well-trained individual who understands the scope of the work they've been hired to perform. It's a simple request. When a person goes to a doctor, when I go, I expect to be treated by a well-trained and licensed physician. The township is asking no less of our construction workers. I can tell you from personal experience that construction is not simple. I took a 4.5-year apprenticeship to manufacture, install, and test residential and commercial ductwork. I've been in the field for 11 years, and to be honest, I still learn something new every day when I'm on the job. The trades are complicated and ever-changing in nature, and we should hold our construction workers to a certain standard. It's the same as in any other field. Two, the contractors that Havertown hires should be ethical. As stated in the ordinance, a contractor who has broken the law should not be hired by our township. It's that simple. I don't give money to criminals. Likewise, the township should not be awarding construction contracts to companies that violate labor or finance laws. I think that's a no-brainer. Three, the work should be done safely. We're asking our contractors to hold their workers to a minimum level of OSHA training. We are expressing the desire to keep people alive and healthy while they're doing a dangerous job for the benefit of Havertown. And four, all workers hired by contractors that are hired by Havertown should be paid a fair wage. If a contractor is going to be doing work in Havertown, that individual should compensate his workers to a level equal to the standard of that industry in the area. It's a fair standard that we should respect in Havertown. If all these points are met by our contractors, we as taxpayers benefit. And I want to address an elephant in the room. This ordinance is not a backdoor effort to lock out non-union labor. All contractors should be able to live up to these standards, every single one. The township is seeking to establish a baseline for training, ethics, safety, and payment to their workers. Professional workers have standards. Havertown should respect them, and this will have exceedingly big implications with the upcoming construction of the library. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in that row? Yes.
Hello, good evening. I'm Helene Comrie-Smith. Thank you again. I live in the Manoa section. I think that, I hear a lot of talk tonight about support for the library, which wouldn't people? Why wouldn't you want a library? Why wouldn't you want it improved? I've lived here for 25 years. My son is 22. My daughter will be 20. I used it with them when they were little. We played with the mailbox. I read to them stories. It was great. It was really an awesome time. Then COVID hit. But I want to talk about P4 2023, the money ordinance, and I think, $24.5 million. And I know it's also for the hooks and ladders, for the firemen. We're looking at the library. We're also looking at the park. I think what I did do is I went back and looked for what did we agree to as a township? What has been agreed to in the past? We agreed that we need a new library. We agreed that it's going to stay there on Darby Road. That's what I see agreed upon. What I haven't seen agreed upon is somewhat of a cost. We talked about $12 million at one point. I reviewed meetings from 2014, 2015, 2019, and 2020. And I think that the elephant really in the room is like, what's the cost to the taxpayers? What is it going to cost us? What's it going to come out of our tax dollars? So when we talk about support of the library, I don't think anyone disagrees. We don't need a new library or we don't need renovations. And I'm sorry, I understand that, it's a cost to fix the elevator. It should have been done. I'm sorry, it's a public building. That it should have been fixed, regardless if we're doing renovations or not. And that library is going to be closed for 18 months. So kids, you're not going to have access to a library for 18 months. You're going to have to find another hub. These are the things that we need to talk about, and I've talked about this in the past. We put that cart before the horse, and what I've been asking for is hey, let's come up with a solution. I'm glad that you're going to vote for the $3 million to take that money, and we already have $4 million approximately set aside. But what is it going to cost us as the taxpayer? That's what I'm interested in. That's, I think, where the breakdown comes, where the discussion comes and the discourse comes. So if someone can answer that question, because I've been watching the meetings and it's 18 million, 20.5 million, 21 million. What is it? Like, let's put a number on it and discuss that. And then what can we do? We put this grandiose plan together, and we really are having a lot of discourse and disagreement in the community because we really, what's the money amount? So I just want to put that out there. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Anybody else in that third row? And in the last. Okay, thank you all for your comments. There were a couple, there are a couple comments that, a couple included some questions, so let me see if I can address them. There was a question about why not more ARPA money. Our finance committee went through what is our projected uses, aspirational uses of the ARPA money that we have, which we've already factored into not only the 2023 budget, but also capital plans for the years going forward. And they determined, with the assistance of our township finance director and township manager, that $3 million at this point was the best use of that money toward the library. So doesn't mean the board couldn't reconsider it. The project is going, but $3 million was the choice. And what was the conclusion of all of those professionals in the group? There's also a question about, can we pay off these bonds? The bonds will have a certain schedule during which you can't pay them off, and then afterwards they can be redeemed. We have, in the last 20 years, refinance bonds whenever interest rates have changed enough to make that refinancing worthwhile. We've saved millions of dollars over the last few years in doing such refinancings. So there is a period of time that some bonds can't be redeemed, but then there comes a time when the entire series can be. I don't know off the top of my head that exact schedule. I know that schedule is part of, is cooked into the bond ordinance itself, and is is the schedule that the market will allow. And Mr. Schlesinger can jump up and stop me if I'm saying anything ridiculously wrong. Thumbs up. All right, good. I got the okay from Mr. Schlesinger. And then Ms. Conroy Smith, thank you. You did ask about the number 24.5. The ordinance we are passing tonight is called a parameters ordinance. So it has a higher number and it has a higher interest rate because we have to give our finance, we have to give our consultants the ability to do a combination of discount pricing or premium pricing, and that enables us to have, and I want to make sure I get the nomenclature right, but you can issue at a discount so that you have a $100 face bond, but it actually, we only get paid $95 for it, but its interest rate is low, but because it's 95, its interest rate, its actual interest rate would go up, and that would match the market. The opposite can happen where you can have a $100 bond, but it costs $105, but it has a higher interest rate, and then it ends up being a low interest rate. So the combination of discount and premium is used to give us the maximum amount of flexibility to get the best possible pricing and the best amount of money out of the bonds. And because these are priced after we do the ordinance, we give our financial advisors and our underwriters the leeway to do that, and we do that mathematically. So there is no chance that we will borrow $24.5 million at 6%. That will not happen. If the bonds have a face of a higher amount toward 25, it will mean that they have a lower interest rate. If they have a higher interest rate, it means it will be a lower face of the bond. And that, I'm getting a nod. I got it right. Thanks. So that is that question. Otherwise, thank you, everybody, for your comments. So there's also, I know the library is planning on using temporary space during the construction of the library. We know at least of space in Manoa Shopping Center that is already not under contract, certainly under consideration. It's already under contract. And we're counting on the library taking advantage of as much space as it can find to maintain as many programs as it can. 18 months does seem like a lot of time, although I'll remind, but 18 months will come and go, and we will have a new library. And for kids that are in the middle school for 3 years, for kids that are in the high school for 4 years, for our kids that are in all our grade schools for 5 years, they'll all get to enjoy this new library. So that is the plan. I have one last announcement, and that is that today is Bill Goldsmith's birthday. So let's just, we don't need to sing him happy birthday, but let's just all give him a round of applause and thank him for his help. With that, I will close the forum and will ask for a Bureau of Fire update.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Bureau of Fire, our combination of 5 fire companies, responded to a total of 81 incidents in the month of March. 54 of those were in the township. 27 were out-of-town mutual aid incidents. The average number of personnel or firemen per call was 18. They committed 1,339 personnel hours to the incidents, and an additional 607 hours of personnel hours committed to training for the fire departments. So we provided mutual aid to 9 working fires within Delaware County in the month of March, and all 5 companies attended a hands-on drill at the Township Fire Tower and the Public Works Yard, where the crews worked on incident command and live fire scenarios in this past month. And that concludes the report for March, Mr. President.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Wexler. Our next item is Township Auditor Update. I will give the Township Auditor Update. Mr. Anderson is unavoidably detained at work today, but I can assure you that he went through the warrants. And any questions that he has, he raised, he's indicated to us that he raised to our Township Finance Director. Those questions were all answered to his satisfaction, and it is his recommendation to us that we approve the warrants as presented to us in tonight's agenda. Next item is Mr. Berman's Township Manager Update.
3 very brief items. First, the township conducted the annual spring shredding event, and during the event, the residents drop off their confidential documents and watch as they're loaded into the truck and shredded. And this year, all of it gets recycled. They went through 7,000 pounds, more than 7,000 pounds of paper. And so, you know, it provides a great service to the residents. It's good for the environment with the recycling, but it's also a community kind of event where people come and they see the township staff who are here. And in that regard, I wanted to thank Lieutenant Kelly and Amy Cuthbertson for kind of managing all these events. And also Dan Mariani was here, but he's not here with us this evening. So thank you, Amy, for managing all of those events. There'll be another shredding event in August, and then there'll be 2 e-waste events this year, one in June and one in November. And so they're where you can drop off your electronics here at the Township Building. So again, Amy manages all those events. So again, thank you very much for doing that. Also, we can all agree or disagree on bond financing and the way we're going to fund the library, or whether you want to fund the library. But putting together this bond deal and pulling together all of the data that's necessary to do that work it's an incredible amount of work. And I've seen it done. I've worked on it in the past, but Amy does it incredibly well. And I thank you for managing this team that we've put together for doing this bond issue this evening. And finally, also on a good note, well, let me start. Earlier this year, many of us watched Monday Night Football, where the Damar Hamlin of the Buffalo Bills fell and basically had a heart attack right in front of us. And we all had that helpless feeling. Yes, they did CPR. Yes, they used an AED, and it was quick. And he was rushed to the hospital, and they let him out of the hospital just 9 days later. And it tells you how important it is to know about CPR and AED and other life-saving practices. And the reason I bring this up is because a short time later, our director of paramedics, Jim McCanns, approached me and said, hey, we should be offering these classes. We all looked at this and we felt helpless. So with a relatively small amount of funds from the township, we offered some classes to the spring sports leagues, the little leagues, and some of the other sports organizations in town. And Jim pulled this together. It was not just CPR and AED, but it was also Narcan and the Stop the Bleed class. And we served about 150 parents, coaches, and others with these classes. And so, Jim, I just want to thank you for bringing these life-saving classes to our township and look forward to doing it again in the fall.
Here. Thank you, Mr. Berman. Our next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for the regular meeting of March 13, 2023.
So I move to approve the meeting minutes of March 13th, 2023.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Any additions, deletions, corrections on these minutes? Hearing none. Mr. Berman?
Commissioner Gondek?
Yes.
Commissioner Forresty Grubb?
Yes.
Commissioner McCluskey?
Yes.
Commissioner Cavender?
Yes.
Commissioner Quinn?
Yes.
Commissioner Hart?
Yes.
Commissioner Wexler?
Yes.
Commissioner Trombetta?
Yes.
Commissioner Holmes?
Yes. Next item on our agenda is the approval of warrants.
Motion to approve the following warrant, number 4, 2023, totaling $5,639,209.22. General and sewer fund payroll for March 16, 2023, in the amount of $740,319.75. General fund payroll for March 30th, 2023, in the amount of $817,659.52. General fund disbursements, number 4, 2023, in the amount of $3,335,596.99. Sewer fund disbursements, number 4, 2023, in the amount of $280,792.73. Community Development Block Grant Fund disbursement, number 4, 2023, in the amount of $101,750.14. Capital Projects Fund disbursement, number 4, 2023, in the amount of $341,235, and that should be 95 cents. American Rescue Plan Fund disbursement, number 4, 2023, in the amount of $16,245.47. Credit card statement ending March 27, 2023, in the amount of $5,608.67.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions, comments, deletions? Hearing none.
Commissioner Gondek?
Yes.
Commissioner Forresty Grubb?
Yes.
Commissioner McCluskey?
Yes.
Commissioner Cavender?
Yes.
Commissioner Quinn?
Yes.
Commissioner Hart?
Yes.
Commissioner Wexler?
Yes.
Commissioner Trombetta?
Yes.
Commissioner Holmes?
Yes. Our next item on the agenda is ordinance number P4 of 2023. This is the 2023 bond issue. It's first reading.
Mr. President, motion to adopt the first reading of ordinance number P4, 2023, authorizing the incurrence of non-electoral debt by the Township of Haverford to finance all or a portion of the costs of certain capital projects of the township, providing for the issuance of one or more series of general obligation bonds of the township in an agreement principal amount not to exceed $24,500,000, appointing a paying agent and sinking fund depository, and authorizing a paying agency agreement, setting forth provisions regarding the denominations, maturities, rates of interest, and terms of redemption for the bonds, setting forth parameters for the maximum principal maturity amounts and dates and maximum interest rates and other details of the bonds, authorizing a book entry only system for the bonds, providing for the registration, transfer, and exchange of the bonds, authorizing the sale of the bonds by private negotiated sale and authorizing the acceptance of a bond purchase proposal, authorizing the execution and delivery of bonds, covenanting to budget and pay debt service on the bonds, and pledging the full faith, credit, and taxing power of the township for the payment thereof, providing for a sinking fund for each series of the bonds, providing for a construction fund and rebate fund for each series of the bonds, making certain covenants regarding federal income tax matters, authorizing the preparation and filing of a debt statement, borrowing-based certificate, debt exclusion proceedings, and a transcript of the proceedings for the issuance of the bonds, providing for the disposition of the proceeds of the bonds, providing for the form of the bonds, authorizing preliminary and final official statement for the bonds, authorizing municipal bond insurance, providing that the local government unit debt act shall apply to the bonds, providing that this ordinance shall be a contract with the holders of the bonds, authorizing certain additional actions, including the execution of a tax compliance agreement and a continuing disclosure agreement of the township, delegating approval powers to certain officers of the township, authorizing public hearings, repealing inconsistent ordinances, and setting forth the effective date hereof.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments from my colleagues? We have been through a number of presentations from our bond counsel as well as our financial advisor, Mr. Schlesinger and Mr. Richter. And so does anybody have any final questions for them or comments for the board? Hearing none?
Commissioner Gondek.
Yes.
Commissioner Forresty Grubb.
Yes.
Commissioner McCluskey.
Yes.
Commissioner Cavender.
Yes.
Commissioner Quinn.
Yes.
Commissioner Hart.
Yes.
Commissioner Wexler.
Yes.
Commissioner Trombetta.
Yes.
Commissioner Holmes.
Yes. Next item is ordinance number P5, 2023, responsible contractors.
Mr. President.
Actually, before we go on, I do want to thank our professionals who did an extraordinary job of putting together this latest financing for us and being available for all of our questions and being available for a lot of the public conversations that we've had about this. We are always in good hands when we are in your hands, but it is worth saying every time. Township finances are in better shape than they've ever been. Our story 15 years ago was a story that was a very scary story to tell in the public markets, and that has changed in part from the dedication of the people who have worked with us and worked with our staff to make ours a great story in the public markets and to earn us the AAA bond rating that through today we still enjoy and helps us borrow in the best possible way with the most possible savings for our citizens. So I want to thank you both, Mr. Richter and Mr. Schlesinger, and your entire organizations for the help that you gave us. And we look forward to a continued partnership with you in the future. And now, Commissioner Forresty Grubb, I apologize for interrupting you, but if you would like to present ordinance number P5 of 2023, we're all ears.
Motion to adopt the first reading of ordinance number P5, 2023, amending Chapter 4, Administration of Government, Part 10, Physical Affairs, Section 4-1008, Establishment of Purchasing System to adopt certain procedures related to the solicitation and award of public contracts within the township, providing for certification requirements for public contractors, providing for certification requirements for subcontractors on public contracts, providing for public contract review procedures, repealing inconsistent ordinances or parts of ordinances, containing a savings clause, and providing for an effective date.
Second.
I have a motion and I have a second. Do we have any questions or comments from my colleagues?
I would make and I don't know whether this is a motion or a request, that ordinance number P52023 be amended as written to increase the dollar threshold level from $100,000 to $250,000.
Thank you, Commissioner Gondek. And let's be very specific.
That would be page 3 of our ordinance.
So Section 1A, 4B, and then paragraph 1, it looks like. These responsible contractor bidding requirements set forth herein shall apply to public works projects valued at $100,000 or more undertaken by the township. Mr. Gondik, your request is that this ordinance as moved be amended to change 100,000 to 250,000. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Commissioner Forresty Grubb, do you accept that amendment?
I do.
He doesn't. And does Mr. McCluskey, as the person who seconded the amendment, as the person who seconded the ordinance, do you accept that change?
I do. Can I make a comment as well?
You can, of course.
So we discussed this at the work session last week in terms of, an appropriate dollar value. And we also discussed, and we've had time over the last week to look at what others in the area, in varying municipalities, school districts, counties, and what their threshold is. I think the overwhelming goal of all of us is to assure that our larger projects and construction projects, certainly the $250,000 number, would be required to follow the responsible contractor language, and that is maintained even with the proposed amendment. What it also takes into account is the legitimate concerns of sort of our administration and how we're administering this moving forward. And it'll give us some time to consider, both for the township employees and for the manager and finance director and everyone, to see how it plays out over the course of the next year or two. And we can reevaluate as we go in terms of this. But just to answer one of the questions that came up from last week, there are multiple municipalities, both in Delaware County now, including our neighboring properties of Radnor and Upper Darby, that have these ordinances, as well as, not including Philadelphia, but Bucks County Commissioners, Chester County Commissioners, Montgomery County Commissioners, our own Delaware County Council. This is not a unique proposition. So I know there was a concern raised in terms of contractors that we may have used in the past, and whether they would be able to meet this requirement. And I just offer, given the breadth of these ordinances that exist within the local 5-county area, it's really going to be incumbent, and it has nothing to do with Haverford Township, of these businesses, if they want to keep doing business with municipalities, to figure out how they can meet this type of requirement. And as we discussed last week, these are types of requirements where we're just expressing a baseline of responsibility in terms of their work. So with that context, to answer your question, yes, I would accept the amendment.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have something short they want to add? Any other comments from my colleagues?
Can be changed at, at any time, right? We can come back and amend as if.
Right. I mean, through the normal course of things. Yeah. I mean, we do want to be somewhat predictable in what we do. And so when, making a decision like this right now is with the idea of hanging on to it for a while to see how that goes. But yes, there's no law we can pass that's so powerful that we can't amend it. Yeah.
All right, great.
No.
I would just throw in briefly a thanks to my fellow commissioners for the thoughtful conversations that took place with regard to this particular ordinance. I do think that this ordinance will help strengthen us as a township, and I just wanted to express my appreciation for the thoughtful and diligent kind of debate that went on to get us to where we're at.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Gondik. And let me say also, this is there are a number of times now in the last several years where we as a board recognize that we not only are we a governing body, but we are a consumer. We are an employer. So we've taken positions and stands in the past where in part we want to set a good example as a fellow employer or as a significant large purchaser of services. And as the point was made about protecting safety, about protecting the value of the services and encouraging all of our contractors to to be qualified and to work with integrity. I think it's important for us as a consumer of those services to take this step, and I support the ordinance. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Berman.
Commissioner Gondek.
Yes.
Commissioner Forresty-Grubb.
Yes.
Commissioner McCluskey.
Yes.
Commissioner Cavender.
Yes.
Commissioner Quinn.
Yes.
Commissioner Hart.
Yes.
Commissioner Wexler.
Yes.
Commissioner Trombetta.
Yes.
Commissioner Holmes.
Yes. Ordinance P6, traffic, first reading.
Yes, I make a motion to adopt the first reading of ordinance number P6 or 2023 will authorize the traffic restrictions on the following highways with a special parking zones in front of Pembroke Road side of 255 Casimir Road.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Hearing none. Mr. Berman.
Commissioner Gondek.
Yes.
Commissioner Forresty-Grubb.
Yes.
Commissioner McCluskey.
Yes.
Commissioner Cavender.
Yes.
Commissioner Quinn.
Yes.
Commissioner Hart.
Yes.
Commissioner Wexler.
Yes.
Commissioner Trombetta.
Yes.
Commissioner Holmes.
Yes. Our next item, we move from ordinances to resolutions. This is Resolution 2305 of 2023. This is a $3 million ARPA allocation, the library renovation project. I will entertain the motion.
Mr. President, I'll make the motion to adopt Resolution 2305-2023 that the Board of Commissioners of Haverford Township hereby authorizes the designation of $3 million of the Township's American Rescue Plan Fund allocation to assist with funding of the Haverford Township Free Library Renovation Project.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments?
And as I said last week, if there's anybody else who would like to give us some money for this cause and to bring the range down more, I think that would be great. And I know everybody on this board, and I know the other boards would be thrilled with that too. So,
Hear, hear. Commissioner Quinn. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Berman?
Commissioner Gondek.
Yes.
Commissioner Forresty-Grubb.
Yes.
Commissioner McCluskey.
Yes.
Commissioner Cavender.
Yes.
Commissioner Quinn.
Yes.
Commissioner Hart.
Yes.
Commissioner Wexler.
Yes.
Commissioner Trombetta.
Yes.
Commissioner Holmes.
Yes. The next resolution for consideration, Resolution 2306 of 2023. This is the American Rescue Plan Act Coronavirus Local Fiscal Recovery Fund Senior Initiatives.
Mr. President, motion to adopt
All right.
resolution number 2306, 2023, that the Board of Commissioners desires to make financial investments in certain township initiatives in accordance with the allowable spending structure as described in the U.S. Department of Treasury's final rule as follows. Senior Citizens 2023 Volunteer Expo to be held on May 31st, 2023, and a coffee open house to be held in the fall of 2023 at an amount not to exceed $6,000 as approved in the 2023 budget, and that the Board of Commissioners of Haverford Township hereby approves the use of funds from the Township's American Rescue Plan Fund allocation for the above referenced projects and initiatives.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions or comments? Hearing none.
Commissioner Gondek.
Yes.
Commissioner Forresty-Grubb.
Yes.
Commissioner McCluskey.
Yes.
Commissioner Cavender.
Yes.
Commissioner Quinn.
Yes.
Commissioner Hart.
Yes.
Commissioner Wexler.
Yes.
Commissioner Trombetta.
Yes.
Commissioner Holmes.
Yes. And one more resolution, resolution number 2307 of 2023, the American Rescue Plan Act Coronavirus Local Fiscal Recovery Fund Initiatives.
Mr. President, motion to adopt Resolution 2307-2023 that the Board of Commissioners desires to make financial investments in certain township initiatives in accordance with the allowable spending structure as described in the United States Department of Treasury's final rule as follows. Engineering and construction costs for the Brookline Boulevard sanitary sewer replacement in an amount not to exceed $375,000, and that the Board of Commissioners of Haverford Township hereby approves the use of funds from the Township's American Rescue Plan Fund allocation for the above referenced project and initiative.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Hearing none.
Commissioner Gondik.
Yes.
Commissioner Forresty Grubb.
Yes.
Commissioner McCluskey.
Yes.
Commissioner Cavender.
Yes.
Commissioner Quinn.
Yes.
Commissioner Hart.
Yes.
Commissioner Wexler.
Yes.
Commissioner Trombetta.
Yes.
Commissioner Holmes.
Yes. Our next item for us to consider are two settlement agreements that the township is entering into. These are two separate motions. I will entertain the first.
President, motion to approve settlement agreement and service-connected disability pension for a Haverford police officer.
Second.
Second.
As you recall, these are items we talked about appropriately in executive session, but approving the actual settlement agreement needs to take place out here in the public. Mr. Berman, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Gondik.
Yes.
Commissioner Forresty Grubb.
Yes.
Commissioner McCluskey.
Yes.
Commissioner Cavender.
Yes.
Commissioner Quinn.
Yes.
Commissioner Hart.
Yes.
Commissioner Wexler.
Yes.
Commissioner Trombetta.
Yes.
Commissioner Holmes.
Yes. Another settlement agreement to consider, the Township Administration Building.
Mr. President, motion to ratify settlement agreement for water claims and punch list issues, not including the facade.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Mr. Berman.
Commissioner Gondik.
I would be remiss if I didn't at least voice my displeasure for this particular settlement. Although, while saying that voting yes for this is the appropriate course of action for the better of the township. And so in that regards, I will say yes.
Commissioner Forresty Grubb.
Yes.
Commissioner McCluskey.
Yes.
Commissioner Cavender.
Yes.
Commissioner Quinn.
Yes.
Commissioner Hart.
Yes.
Commissioner Wexler.
Yes.
Commissioner Trombetta.
Yes.
Commissioner Holmes.
Yes. The next item for us to consider, we're now in contracts. The contract for the Brookline Boulevard sanitary sewer.
President, make a motion to award the Brookline Boulevard sanitary sewer contract to N. Abenizio Contractors, Conshohocken, Pennsylvania, in the amount of $331,785, submitting the lowest responsible bid.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments on this? We did talk about this project, I believe, at our work session. Mr. Berman?
Commissioner Gondik.
Yes.
Commissioner Forresty Grubb.
Yes.
Commissioner McCluskey.
Yes.
Commissioner Cavender.
Yes.
Commissioner Quinn.
Yes.
Commissioner Hart.
Yes.
Commissioner Wexler.
Yes.
Commissioner Trombetta.
Yes.
Commissioner Holmes.
Yes. We now move to township purchases under Parks and Recreation Department, the soundproofing curtains for paddock pickleball courts.
Mr. President, motion to authorize the purchase of soundproofing curtains for paddock pickleball courts for Paddock Field to JMC Lighting, LLC, Alameda, California, in the amount of $17,712, submitting the lowest responsible quote. This will be paid for from ARPA money.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments?
Mr. President,
Yes.
just like to
Commissioner Trombetta.
ask for my colleagues' support for this. As we've heard from the Oggs and from the DeMarcos, they are just some of a number of neighbors at Paddock Park who have been distressed by the level of noise from pickleball use. We want to continue to provide the pickleball courts, because it really does transcend generations. But we want to make sure that we're supporting the quality of life for our residents. So I'm asking for my colleagues' support tonight. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Commissioner Trombetta. Any other questions or comments?
I would just indicate that you definitely have my support on this, and I hope it works so that we can expand it to some of the other parks in the township.
Yeah, that's the question. How effective is this, Brian? Do we know?
Yes, they've done sound studies for these products, and they do get us below the thresholds that they were referring at the beginning. Anywhere, pickleball played like we do at paddock goes anywhere between 60 and 70 decibels at its highest. We'll get it down closer to between 45 and 55. They said that when you go down 10 decibels, it sounds like the sound is cut in half. So is the sound going to go away? No. Will it make it tolerable? I think the answer to that is yes.
And Brian, is the plan to, if this works, put them at Westgate and
Yes, the
Grange?
plan would be to put them at Grange and Westgate if it works, but because of the cost, we wanted to make sure that this is effective. I have reached out to a number of communities that have used these products, and they say that the residents that were complaining said that the sound definitely was mitigated. It doesn't eliminate it, but it was mitigated.
So hopefully they can use their decks again.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments from my colleagues? Hearing none.
Commissioner Gondek.
Yes.
Commissioner Forresty Grubb.
Yes.
Commissioner McCluskey.
Yes.
Commissioner Cavender.
Yes.
Commissioner Quinn.
Yes.
Commissioner Hart.
Yes.
Commissioner Wexler.
Yes.
Commissioner Trombetta.
Yes.
Commissioner Holmes.
Yes. We now move to appointments. As people recall, we had some additional appointments to make on our boards, holding over since January. First one for consideration is an alternate to serve on the Civil Service Commission.
Mr. President, a motion to appoint Mark O'Connor to serve as an alternate on the Civil Service Commission for a 6-year term to expire December 31st, 2028.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other nominations for this position? Anyone moving to close this?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The motion is closed. We have before us consideration of the appointment of Mr. O'Connor to serve as alternate on the Civil Service Commission for a 6-year term to expire December 31st, 2028. The vote is yes or no. Mr. Berman.
Commissioner Gondek.
Yes.
Commissioner Forresty Grubb.
Yes.
Commissioner McCluskey.
Yes.
Commissioner Cavender.
Yes.
Commissioner Quinn.
Yes.
Commissioner Hart.
Yes.
Commissioner Wexler.
Yes.
Commissioner Trombetta.
Yes.
Commissioner Holmes.
Yes. Our next appointment is a position on the Human Relations Commission. This is to appoint an unexpired 3-year term on the Human Relations Commission, which will expire this December 31st, 2023.
Mr. President, motion to appoint Andrew Ladon to fill an unexpired 3-year term on the Human Relations Commission to expire December 31st, 2023.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any other nomination for the Human Relations Commission to fill this unexpired 3-year term? I will entertain a motion to close the nomination.
Move to close nominations.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to close. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Motion is closed. Under consideration is Andrew Ladone for the unexpired 3-year term to expire 12/31/23. The vote is yes or no. Mr. Berman.
Commissioner Gondek.
Yes.
Commissioner Forresty Grubb.
Yes.
Commissioner McCluskey.
Yes.
Commissioner Cavender.
Yes.
Commissioner Quinn.
Yes.
Commissioner Hart.
Yes.
Commissioner Wexler.
Yes.
Commissioner Trombetta.
Yes.
Commissioner Holmes.
Yes. Our next position is another position on the Human Relations Commission. This is to fill an unexpired 3-year term on the Human Relations Commission, which will expire December 31st, 2025.
Mr. President, motion to appoint Janet Lee to fill an unexpired 3-year term on the Human Relations Commission to expire December 31st, 2025.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for this unexpired, for an appointment to this term. Do we have another nomination?
Mr. President, I nominate Helene Convoy Smith to fill the unexpired 3-year term on the Human Relations Commission to expire December 31st, 2025.
Second.
Mr. President, motion to close.
Second.
We have a motion to close and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the motions are closed. Before us is 2 candidates, Ms. Lee and Ms. Conroy Smith, for the position of the unexpired 3-year term on the Human Relations Commission to expire at the end of December 2025. Mr. Berman, please call the vote.
Commissioner Gondek.
Helene Conroy Smith.
Commissioner Forresty Grubb.
Janet Lee.
Commissioner McCluskey.
Ms. Lee.
Commissioner Cavender.
Janet Lee.
Commissioner Quinn.
Ms. Conroy Smith.
Commissioner Hart.
Ms. Lee.
Commissioner Wexler.
Ms. Lee.
Commissioner Trombetta.
Janet Lee.
Commissioner Holmes.
Ms. Lee. Thank you, Ms. Lee, and thank you, Ms. Conroy Smith, for your candidacy. Ice Rink Advisory Board, we have need a motion to appoint someone to fill an unexpired 3-year term on the Ice Rink Advisory Board, expiring at the end of this year, December 31st, 2023.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Elizabeth Natal to fill an unexpired 3-year term on the Ice Rink Advisory Board to expire December 31st, 2023.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for Ms. Natal. Do we have any other nominations?
Motion to close.
Second.
I have a motion to close and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motions, the nominations are closed. Before us is the candidacy of Ms. Natal. The vote is yes or no. Mr. Berman.
Commissioner Gonda.
Yes.
Commissioner Forresty Grubb.
Yes.
Commissioner McCluskey.
Yes.
Commissioner Cavender.
Yes.
Commissioner Quinn.
Yes.
Commissioner Hart.
Yes.
Commissioner Wexler.
Yes.
Commissioner Trombetta.
Yes.
Commissioner Holmes.
Yes. Next for our consideration is a motion to appoint Shade Tree Commission.
Mr. President,
Ms. Trombetta, Commissioner Trombetta.
I'd like to make a motion to table this until we've had the opportunity to perform some interviews.
Second.
I have a motion to table and second. Please, all in favor of tabling?
Aye.
Any opposed? Shade Tree Commission appointment is tabled. As I indicated last week, Senior Citizens Advisory Board for the 6th Ward is Jerry Vision. I will get Mr. Vision's information to the head of the Senior Advisory Council. Next on our agenda, ladies and gentlemen, a continuation of Citizens Forum for any non-agenda items. This is a moment when anybody who would like to speak on any topic is free to come up. I would ask you to try to confine your comments to 3 minutes. It's not something we enforce to the second, but anyway, I just invite anyone here on the left who would like to speak. Yes.
Hello, my name is Jen Walsh, and I live on Lexington Avenue in Havertown. I'm coming tonight about the Crack. I don't know if you all are aware, but the Crack is closed on Sundays, and it's open from 8 to 2 on Saturdays. And as a community rec center, especially talking tonight about the library so much, this was one of our builds about 10 years ago, and there was a lot of talk about what it would be and what it would give the community. And I would really hope that the community would be able to use it on the weekend. I have taken this to Parks and Rec. I did speak to Mr. Barrett then, as well as the board, and I will go back, but I'm hoping to get support from the commissioners on this. Ideally, I mean, there's a lot I think could change there, but my niche in my 3 minutes, I would really like the basketball courts to be available on a reservation system. Most of Havertown is a great grid community system. I grew up being able to bike to every kid in my elementary school's, home. And when I got to the junior high, I could get to almost everybody. The Crack is out there. A reservation system for drop-in would be great. The drop-in hours they have now are primarily 12 to 4. There are sometimes they go 5 or 6, but primarily 12 to 4, Monday through Friday, nothing on the weekends. So it really does rule out adolescents using the basketball courts. Currently, our park systems, I live in the 9th Ward, so Steelfield or Manila Elementary, that's a drop-in system. The kids ride their bikes. If someone's on the courts, they play with them, play it for the court, or they ride to another one. The Crack doesn't really offer that. I'm not going to and you have to have an adult with you, so I'm not going to load up my car and hope we get a court if we happen to get lucky and there's a 5 or 6 o'clock hour. So that's what I'm hoping. I'm going to go back to Parks and Rec. I'm going to continue to try to work with them and see if we can get more out of an $8 million build that was done 10 years ago, especially on library night, to think about those things. By the way, I also love the library. I lived through the first build, got the books at the second floor of the stadium for the 18 months, you know. Maybe we could use the CREC during this time in some way. Just things to think about. Everyone talks about the library being this great community hub. We built a community rec center that no one really uses as a community recreation center. So I'm here to ask for basketball courts and a reservation system and weekend hours. But just some thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Goldsmith.
Thank you. Phil Goldsmith, 312 Old Forest Road, Wynwood, Pennsylvania. Obviously, I thank the commissioners for their actions tonight. And we will be taking care of children and adults when we're closed. We will be at the, as the Commissioner said, we will be at the Manoa Shopping Center and the old C&M store. And we will have other places that people can go to. We even hope to have a bookmobile going around the community. So we will be up and running and doing what we have to do. But most importantly, I want to thank the commissioners for your due diligence. This has been a long process. Look at Bill Wexler over there. You've probably been here the longest, Bill, I'm not sure, but it's been a long process. We've looked at different sites over the years. We've looked at costs. We've looked at renovations to expansions to going here to going there. It's been frustrating. It's been tiring. I've aged considerably, as you can tell, as I leave the room often to go to the bathroom. But you've done your job. The commissioners have done their job. And the public may not know how much we've gone through and looking at everything every which way. But we've done a lot. You've done a lot. You've made us do a lot. And I think at the end of the day, we are going to have a great facility that serves this township, and everyone will be happy with it. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dory Dowdy. Live in Haverford Township for 33 years this year. And I just, I was wondering with, I'm happy the library is coming along and we've gotten the nice grants that we've gotten and going through with the bonds and everything and donations. But maybe I missed, what is going to be the ultimate burden of the taxpayers of Haverford Township? I still didn't really hear that answered. If you can maybe enlighten me about that. Has it been discussed, or is it?
Well, so somebody can walk right through it if you'd like to, Mr. McCloskey, our head of finance.
The intended borrowing is 20.4 for all the capital projects. That includes 13 million for library renovation and expansion, 13.9 for the fire and emergency apparatus, 3.9, I said 13, excuse me. Let me clarify that. 13 for the library, 3.9 for the fire and emergency apparatus, 2.5 for stadium equipment and improvements, and 1 million for solar project.
So I guess I hear all that, and a lot of those things are important, but what for the library, which seems like I was looking.
I said 13.
Yeah, I know. I guess the tax burden for just the is it a percentage of that we should see in an increase or in our taxes? That's what I'm just.
Oh.
Is that question reasonable to ask?
Oh, it's a reasonable question to ask. The debts, I believe the debt service for 23 was already factored into the 23 budget.
Okay.
Naturally, with a bond issue, we won't know exactly how much the debt service is going to be until the bonds are sold. So we won't know the exact number until May or June. But if we use the estimates that we've gotten from our financial advisor, I think the additional debt service would be $1.1 million per year, of which we already had $1.5 million per year, of which we already had $1.1 million factored into the 2023 budget, because we knew we were going to plan to borrow at some point, and we had to budget accordingly. So if we use that logic and those estimates that we've been given, and the market holds to those estimates, we would have to raise an additional $400,000 for debt service. The $1.1 million that's already in the budget, and $1.5 million if that's what it's going to be. So we would just have to see when we go to prepare next year's budget how we would raise $400,000. Does it necessarily have to come from property taxes? Will it come from other sources of revenue?
reduce spending in other areas. But we just won't know for sure what that actual debt service is until the bond process is complete.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Cuthbertson. Anybody else on the left? Sir.
Hi, I grew up in Haverford Township. Hi, Mom. Everyone seems very excited about the library. Oh, yeah, Tristan Grupp, 107 Landaff Road. I grew up in Haverford Township. I've known the community for a while. I love it. Totally support the library. It seems like a lot of people are on board. So I kind of wanted to talk about something different right now. I'm young. I'm worried about climate change. I know that you guys are doing some comprehensive planning and a climate action plan. I think one of the biggest assets in our community that's underutilized is the Norristown High-Speed Line. A lot of the stations along the route have really low density and don't make a lot of sense for having such a busy transit stop. And so I wonder, in your climate action plan, if you can do something to address the low density around each of the stations, make them more pedestrian friendly, connect them more with the neighborhoods around them, because there's a huge disconnect between a lot of the housing, especially with Cobb's Creek running along the line, and people's ability to access it. So I think because we can save so much energy by using public transit, the township should look to how can we increase ridership, and I think that could be through transit-oriented development around each of the stations. Thank you.
Thank you. Can the camera pick up all your beaming, Commissioner Christie Grubb? Anybody else on the left want to get up and embarrass their parents? Nice job. Bravo. Great. Excellent presentation. Anybody on the right? Yes.
I'll get up and embarrass myself again.
It would be the first time.
Yes, Betsy McElreavy, 229 Wendover Drive, and I'm not embarrassed to embarrass myself, but I just had a question and concern. I know that we just make the comment, you don't make any comments back, but this is directed to Deputy Chief Hagan. Just concerned about what we keep hearing in the news about the Quarry Center in regards to the Lowe's and the Kohl's and the Giant. It just seems that week after week, month after month, there's incidences at those sites, and just wondering what type of conversations have been had. I'm sure you've had them, or the chief has had them, in regards to either the Kohl's increasing their security, changing their hours, changing what doors are open for access for these, these people that are coming in taking stuff out of all three of those locations. It just seems like Havertown's become the place. If you want to steal something at a Lowe's or Kohl's or at a Giant, just go to Havertown. And it's really become a blight on our town in regards to that area. I know that it occurs in other areas, but it seems to be prevalent in that area. So I'm sure you guys have been working on it. I appreciate all that the officers have done. I know that the blue lights are down there. I don't know how much of a deterrent. I'm sure there's been more, coverage of the officers going down there, but just it's really a concern. And the concern is that someone's going to eventually maybe get hurt. Right now, it's just they're taking some goods and putting them in a cart and pushing them out the side door, the front door, back door. But we need to be concerned about if somebody got hurt in those incidents. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Welcome. I can assure you, the police are constantly reporting back to us about the steps they're taking with our large retail stores. It's not specific. It's not unique to those three locations, although for all of us here in Havertown, it feels that way. There is, unfortunately, a tremendous spike in shoplifting and, frankly, just in brazen criminal activity in the retail area as well as other areas of commerce. But I can assure you that our police department is working with the managers of those stores and the managers of other locations in Haverford Township where we've had more publicized incidents of whether it's violence or of just other criminal activity. The good news, is that we, in our county, we have a good district attorney who's taking a serious position on crime, on petty crime, as well as violent crime. And we have a police department and neighboring police departments that take it all very seriously as well. We have a great deal of cooperation between our neighboring police departments and ours. And we're doing their best to keep our town safe for our residents and for our visitors. Deputy, unless I got anything dramatically wrong, I hopefully let you off the hook of speaking tonight. All right.
I appreciate the comment back. Thank you very much.
Certainly. Thank you for your comments, and for your comments earlier. Took a long time. We're borrowing the money to do the library.
I thought I was
So we're
going to
underway.
be dead before we did anything for the library.
Well, I'm going to ask him to drive you home and make sure you're not dead, and that you're here for when we cut that ribbon.
I'm going to make sure that I'm there because it's been a long time, and I appreciate, this town is full of passionate people, and they come in front of you at all times and throw so many different things, and we appreciate all of your time. We just want to make this town stay the way it's been, a safe, family-friendly, senior citizen-friendly, young community, and we want it to be safe. So that's the most important thing.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Is there anybody else who wants to speak on a non-agenda item? Oh, yes, certainly. I didn't mean to.
Brian Ramona from the 9th Ward. I want to actually commend the police department and give them extra kudos, especially in light of what many of you heard about happened in Louisville earlier today, where everyone who dons that uniform takes on a responsibility that most of us could never imagine. The possibility of walking into a location in your town, in your city, and never making it home. So thank you for all you do and everyone in the force, because we are very lucky to have as good a police department as we do. I've been in the town for 20 years, almost 20 years. It'll be 20 years in August. I never thought that I would leave my native California 37 years ago, but I did, and I'm glad that I've settled in this township. I've always been proud of learning different things about the township. I'm on the historical commission, and I've been very proud to serve on that commission for 4 years, trying to maintain the integrity and the historical nature of a lot of the properties in this town. But I'm also always interested for good PR that the township has. I'm a fan of the show Shark Tank. Many of you may have seen that. Just happened to be watching one of the recorded episodes because I wasn't able to watch it. I was on the West Coast with my 89-year-old mother, God help me, when that episode aired, and I saw these two bouncy young men walk out onto the carpet and say, "I'm Peter Shapiro, I'm Stuart Shapiro, from Havertown, Pennsylvania." I had to hit the pause button on my remote because I was stunned that somebody from Havertown was actually on Shark Tank. So their offices are here in Havertown on Darby Road. So to the Shapiro brothers, congratulations. If you are watching this, if you are not, they're probably not because they're so busy trying to build this business of smoothie machines that they're trying to get all over the country. So I just wanted to publicly acknowledge that we have more famous people in Havertown, and that's great. I think anything we can do to enhance the profile of Havertown is fantastic. So I just wanted to put that out there in public so that people know about it. Thank you.
Thank you for telling us that. I appreciate it. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak? Yes.
Hello, Mac Wagner from Rosewood Lane. I don't know if this is old business or other business or something, but anyway, I have 2 requests for updates, one of which is the Haverford Road Diet. We were told that we would be hearing more about it, and so I'd like to know when and what that's happening. There, I was involved with that non-Zoom meeting, whatever it was called, and we were allowed to ask questions. I asked a question, and that was not resolved, and I also commented afterwards and asked my question again, and my question has still not been answered. And so I'm anxious to follow along with what's happening with the road diet. The second thing is the comprehensive plan. It was like, we got to do it, we got to do it, we got to do it, and now we're hearing nothing about it. It was supposed to be returned to the steering committee, and then where was it going? And we haven't heard anything else. So I'd like to know what's happening with the comprehensive plan.
Thank you.
And that's it.
Okay. As far as the road diet goes, there is a subcommittee of commissioners who participated in that Zoom hearing that you're talking about, and are planning a meeting with PennDOT. First, a meeting just among the township officials in PennDOT, and then our hope is to have another public meeting with the affected citizens to address the issues that were raised in that meeting. A number of us had issues with the road diet as it was presented. And so our goal is a two-step process. First, for just the commissioners to meet with PennDOT and discuss the comments and the issues that were raised by us and by people in that meeting. And then with the goal of, again, inviting public comment. PennDOT has not closed the period of time yet for accepting comments, and I don't believe any construction is scheduled until at least 2025, right? Planning in 24 and construction in 25. So we do have a significant amount of time. I hope so. We have, I believe we have notes and we have the materials that were provided that day, and I believe PennDOT has all the questions that were submitted. They were submitted in writing. The questions were? Yes. Yeah. And with the goal of answering all of them. PennDOT did publish they did publish something on PennDOT in response to that letter. They have highlighted, I don't know, maybe 8 or 10 questions. They said maybe the most frequently asked questions that they got at that hearing, and they have put answers. So that is on the PennDOT site. In our district, which district are we, Jerry? Do you know? 6. District 6, and under the road diet project for Haverford Township, there's. So I think. Well, you can go ahead and tell me what was your question. And actually, yeah, please do. Go ahead. Yeah.
For anybody that experienced the road diet that happened prior to 2016, their data that they gave us in that meeting was all of the accidents from 2016 to 2020, 2022, I forget what it was. Anyway, but the road diet happened along Haverford Road right before Ardmore Avenue going towards Bryn Mawr and out in front of Haverford College prior to 2016. I know this because I retired in 2016, so I was still working when that road diet happened, and I was part of the congestion going to and from work. Anyway, the information from 2016 to 2020 is that there were 2 fatal accidents. So I asked, since we're promoting this for reasons of safety, how many fatal accidents were there prior to 2016 that would have promoted safety? That we did this road diet that then contributed to 2 fatal accidents after the road diet happened. They did not answer that question, and I have not gotten an answer for it. So if we're looking for safety, but we have 2 dead people since 2016, after the road diet was instituted, how many fatalities were there prior to that? 5? 10? Did we decrease it to 2?
So I have no way of knowing the answer to that, but that is certainly something that I expect to be raised with PennDOT, either by us or when we
hope so.
encourage another public meeting. Yes.
Because they did not give me an answer.
Quite a
To my
few
question.
questions went unanswered at that meeting, and
Yes.
that's why a number of us want to have why the commissioners want to have a meeting with PennDOT and speak about that. A number of us were on that call, and our questions weren't answered. So
You also
we'll-
know that along the Haverford Road portion where the businesses are, that sometimes there are 18-wheelers that are unloading on Haverford Road because they can't access the buildings. There is no alleyway behind, which is what they say they normally want to use prior to, decreasing the number of lanes. And I think that's fairly important.
I think all of that is important. I'm hoping that they will address that.
Okay.
Thank you for
The other
raising
thing-
that.
The other thing was planning commission.
Yeah, the
Thank you.
comprehensive plan has gone back to a group, an ad hoc committee made up of folks from the planning commission as well as members of this board to incorporate the comments of the planning commission as well as the comments of the public. And the goal is to reproduce and put back out for consideration a revised comprehensive plan. And that is underway. Right now, it's just in committee, yes. It will be, and a plan will be rolled back out. Anybody else want to speak? No, you're most welcome. Thank you for your comments. We now move to new business. Does any member of the board have any new business to bring before us? Hearing none. Other business? Mr. Gondik?
Thank you. I'll keep it brief. Just two quick announcements. One is that on May 5th, the Westgate Hills Civic Association is going to be having movie night in the park for Cinco de Mayo. They're going to be showing the Disney Pixar movie Coco. Starts at dusk. They'll have candy, popcorn, and drinks. It's going to be a real fun event, obviously family friendly. I highly encourage everyone to come out and check that out and get out. And, now that the weather's finally breaking and we're able to enjoy the outdoors more, take advantage of this opportunity to enjoy what will hopefully be a lovely evening. The other announcement I have involves all of the PICO gas work that's been happening in the First Ward, or parts of the First Ward, I should say. I did receive a notice that the plan is right now for the final mill and overlay to begin on Friday, April 14th. This work will require some temporary lane closures, but there'll be flaggers there to assist, and there will be no interruption of emergency vehicle access. They'll be doing work from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. tentatively. The locations of the specific work is for Dorchester Road from Stanton Road to North Briarwood Road, from 100 Stanton Road from Westchester Pike to Ashton Road, 1500 Sunny Hill Lane from Stanton Road to North Eagle Road, Briarwood Road from North Briarwood Road to Stanton Road, and then North Briarwood Road between Briarwood Road and Sunny Hill Lane. If you have any further questions about that, please feel free to reach out. I know everyone's had to endure the various utility work going on, but hopefully it's finally starting to wrap up.
Commissioner Forresty Grubb.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to say for all the residents of Ward 2 and the township in general that the construction on Pennsy Trail may be starting very soon, and we are hoping to have a construction schedule within a short period of time that we can share. There will be a community meeting to discuss this major construction project that will repave the Pennsy Trail from Manoa Road basically to around the top of Vernon Road. We want to have want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to come to this meeting, learn about this construction project, ask questions, and learn about the various construction stages. I would also say that as we're all enjoying the late evening hours, more and more people are out walking and biking. And I would like to remind everyone who is driving that we need to, by the state law, respect pedestrians and crosswalks. So keep an eye out for those people trying to cross busy roads like Manoa Road, so that we yield to them and they can continue on their way safely. And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Forresty Grubb. Commissioner McCluskey.
Yeah, briefly, the playground equipment that should be going into Grassland Park should be finalized soon, and hopefully that'll be a nice added addition to that park for the spring and summer months. Finally, I just wanted to. I feel like with the library, it's the conclusion of a multi-year process, and I think tonight is a great step, and appreciate the support of everyone on this board and everyone in the library for all the work that they did in terms of putting it together to get us to this point. There's still a lot of work to do, obviously, but I think tonight feels like a monumental step forward, and it's one that the township, I think, will benefit greatly for years to come. So tonight feels like a good night, and a night where, I know everybody on this board does it because they want to make a difference in their community, and tonight feels like a night where we really did something to the benefit of our community. So don't want to let that pass. And I just want to reiterate what Mr. Berman said during his update, and thank Amy Cuthbertson for all her work in terms of putting together the bond and all the work that she did, and all the work that she does to make us look better by managing our finances in such an excellent fashion. So thanks to Amy. And that's all I have for tonight.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner McCluskey. Commissioner Cavender.
Thank you. I'll make it brief. I want to recognize and just acknowledge the person that commented on public transportation tonight. This morning, I went with a number of residents to walk around the neighborhood of Brynford and take a look at pedestrian accessibility, at walkability, at bikeability. And one of the things to note is not only that the road diet goes by Haverford Road right there, but we do have an opportunity through not only the road diet, but also the traffic study that we're undertaking in Brynford to really to start to think more holistically about these kinds of issues in the township. So making sure eventually that we're more walkable, that we're more bikeable. The other thing that we were able to do that I think is important as a community, sort of as a municipal government, is we walked around the areas of Polo and Preston, and that's something that, again, we had the same traffic issues plague the area. We also have a specific issue that we're addressing with Polo and looking at ways to improve it and improve traffic flow there. So it's just nice, and I think what I really want to highlight is the involvement of our residents to be part of this traffic study. I want to thank the township for being available to go in person and hear from residents. I just think it's a great example of the ways that we can work together. Since I joined the board, I've been really impressed with our neighbor involvement and how much time people commit to making this a better community. And I'm really hopeful. I'm excited to see where this project goes in Brynford, and there may be a way we can use a template to expand it to other community and other neighborhoods to make sure that we're improving the whole township. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Cavender. Commissioner Quinn.
I'll make this brief, but my stuttering might make it long. So the Kevin Kane run will take place this Sunday. So go onto their website to kevinkane.org to sign up. It's a great cause, and it's great to see the community. And then the Billy Lake or ALS Beef and Beer will take place on April the 28th at McSorley's Pub. And this year, all the funds will go to a young lady who is 33 years old, who was diagnosed three years ago with this with this horrific aura disease, and it will offset the cost that she has to now deal with the ventilators. And little leagues and all of the leagues in this town have begun. So when you drive down the streets, make sure you know that this is a street where there's kids and stuff. So don't speed down, and don't fly down the streets, because I get calls every week. I know that we all get calls about near misses with kids. And when you're out to walk, which we all want everybody to do, please use the sidewalks and not the streets, because I think we all see everybody walk along the streets when there's a sidewalk right there, and it drives me nuts, because I'm like, why are they there? So, but that's all I have. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Quinn. Commissioner Hart.
Yes, I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank the Brookline Park Steering Committee, our excellent consultant, Simone Collins, and the Parks Department for the work, their ongoing work to develop the Brookline Park. The area has been a community asset since Brookline School was founded, I think, in 1913. The school was open for nearly 80 years. It then served the community as a senior center and a daycare center. And I think we're all working to ensure that this property continues to be a really valuable asset to our local community. It will be a destination park, but a destination park for the 2,000 or 3,000 people that live within a half a mile of the park. So I'm excited about what the final product will be, and thank all of those who've been working on it.
Thank you, Commissioner Hart. Commissioner Wexler.
Thank you. I'll just put out the word again. The Hilltop Civic Association needs volunteers to continue the tradition of the July 4th celebration. So if you have an interest, please contact me. I'll put you in contact with the Civic Association. We're going through one of those, a lot of peaks and valleys with volunteerism in the community. Right now, we're in a valley with the Civic Association. We'd like to get that back up, so please. Those that have called me about road paving, to echo, Lexington and Concord have been repaved this past week. That's great. My street, Morgan, has not. What I'm finding out is we had gas work done and we had water mains done throughout the 9th Ward. Some streets are the responsibility of PICO to be repaved, and some are Aqua. The Aqua contractor is not on schedule for a couple more weeks. So the PICO contractor has finished the roads that he's responsible for, and the Aqua contractor will start in a few more weeks. Last thing I'm going to bring out is fire safety. Last week, a couple of our companies had the occasion to go to the Upper Darby fire, where 2 young 5-year-olds lost their lives. It's a very tragic thing. It affects our volunteers that went there. It affects all the Upper Darby firemen. It affects the police officers. Anytime you have a child casualty, it's a very, I can tell you from firsthand, it hurts. My family calls me the candle curmudgeon. I'd recommend you all. I have 4 daughters, I have 4 granddaughters, and 5 grandsons. I don't allow my daughters and their kids to have candles on the 2nd floor. They're just a danger. Especially now when the windows go open and a little bit of breeze comes, a curtain, a bed cover, anything if it falls. So it's just my 2 cents. If my wife is watching this, she's probably laughing because I take a lot of heat from my kids and grandkids about having candles in the bedrooms. But these things are dangerous. So just please keep that in mind with that. And that's all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you, Commissioner Wexler. In particular for that public service announcement.
Thank you. I'd just like to remind everybody that Discover Haverford is having their Andy Lewis 5K on Sunday, April 23rd at 8:30 a.m. There will be some very temporary road closures in the 4th Ward along Parkview Drive at the Reserve, as well as on Darby Creek Road, but that also impacts some of the cul-de-sacs there. But I encourage you to come out. The proceeds benefit Discover Haverford, our economic development organization. And then I'd just like to reiterate again that we do have this maintenance day Freedom Playground. And thank you to Ms. Phillips and to our Parks and Recreation Department for pulling that together. And thank you to Nolan Painting for being so generous with your time and support. But so that, again, is on April 29th from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. For folks 12 and above. And I think that's it. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Petta. I do, in the 6th Ward, the people on Woodcrest have had a very trying year with the construction on their block, and unfortunately just make the news within the last days that there will be gas main work. To answer any questions, gas work bit of a surprise to us. Several leaks, telling Pico now. Computers and kids going to school and everything are balanced against the tractors to work. Other than that, I would just thank again our professional staff. And I efforts to that I will motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Or adjourned.